What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another amazing Naruto story. What if Minato raised Naruto as Konoha's ultimate weapon? If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description box to original creator of this beautiful creation. Naruto sat in the Hokage's office, fidgeting restlessly in his seat as his father, Minato Namikaze, the fourth Hokage, leafed through a stack of reports. The room was spacious and adorned with scrolls detailing Konoha's history and various maps of the surrounding lands. Sunlight filtered through the open windows, casting warm patches on the polished wooden floor. "Alright, Naruto," Minato began, finally setting aside the documents and fixing his son with a serious gaze. "We need to discuss your training regimen." Naruto sighed inwardly, already dreading the conversation. Training with Jiraiya and under his father's strict supervision had become a routine that left little room for anything else. "Can't I have a break today, Dad?" he asked tentatively, his blue eyes pleading. "I just want to go out and see the village. Maybe meet some people." Minato's expression hardened, his brows furrowing slightly. "Naruto, you know how important your training is," he replied sternly, his voice tinged with disappointment. "You're not just any child. You're my son and the future of Konoha's defenses." Naruto slumped in his chair, frustration bubbling within him. "I get it, Dad," he muttered, his tone sullen. "But I'm tired of being cooped up all the time. I just want to be normal for once." Minato's gaze softened slightly, a hint of regret flickering in his eyes. "Naruto, you're not like other children," he said quietly, his voice tinged with sadness. "You have a responsibility to this village, to protect it from threats." "Yeah, I know," Naruto muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. "But sometimes I wish." Before he could finish, the door to the Hokage's office swung open, and Hyuga entered with his daughter, Hinata, trailing silently behind him. Hiyoshi's presence commanded respect, his posture rigid and his expression unreadable. "Fourth Hokage," Hiyoshi greeted with a formal nod, his voice cool and composed. "Thank you for seeing us." Minato nodded in acknowledgement, his attention shifting from Naruto to his esteemed guest. "Hiyoshi-san, Hinata," he greeted politely. "To what do I owe the pleasure of this visit?" Hiyoshi glanced briefly at Naruto before addressing Minato. "I have come to discuss matters concerning the upcoming Chunin exams and the security arrangements," he explained, his tone measured and businesslike. Minato nodded, gesturing for them to take a seat. "Of course, please proceed." As Hiyoshi and Minato delved into their discussion, Naruto felt a pang of resentment stirring within him. He glanced out the window, the sun casting long shadows across the Hokage monument in the distance. His father's expectations weighed heavily on his shoulders, a constant reminder of his role as a living weapon rather than a child. "Hokage-sama," Naruto interrupted suddenly, his voice tinged with curiosity, "can I ask some questions?" "What's a?" Minato's gaze snapped to Naruto, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Not now, Naruto," he replied tersely, his tone leaving no room for argument. "This discussion is important." Naruto clenched his fists, his resolve hardening. "But I need to." Minato cut him off, his voice sharp with impatience. "That's enough, Naruto," he snapped, his disappointment palpable. "Leave us now." Feeling dismissed and dejected, Naruto pushed himself to his feet and stormed out of the Hokage's office without another word. His father's disapproval echoed in his mind as he walked through the bustling corridors of the Hokage Tower, ignoring the curious glances of passing shinobi. Outside, the village sprawled before him, its familiar sights and sounds offering little solace. Naruto leaned against the stone railing of the lookout point, gazing out at the rooftops and winding streets below. The villagers moved about their daily lives, unaware of the turmoil brewing within him. "I just want to be normal," Naruto muttered bitterly to himself, his gaze fixed on the horizon where the sun dipped low in the sky. Why can't he see that? Naruto leaned against the stone railing, his gaze idly scanning the bustling village below. The cool breeze tousled his blonde hair as he watched villagers go about their daily routines, his thoughts drifting aimlessly. Movement near the Hokage's office caught his attention. The imposing figure of Hyuga emerged, followed by a younger girl with dark hair and a shy demeanor, Hinata, Naruto presumed. He hadn't seen her around the building before, and she had an air of quiet reserve that intrigued him. Hiyoshi spoke to Hinata in a low voice, his tone carrying authority. Naruto couldn't make out their words from this distance, but he observed Hinata nodding silently in response. Her eyes briefly flickered in Naruto's direction before she lowered her gaze, a hint of curiosity mingling with apprehension. Naruto's interest peaked as he watched them depart, wondering about Hinata's life and her role as the Hyuga clan's heiress. She was one of the few people his age he had seen around his home, and he couldn't help but be curious about her. His thoughts drifted to his own secluded upbringing, the strict training imposed by his father, Hokage Minato Namikaze. While grateful for the skills he had gained, Naruto longed for more: freedom to explore the village, to interact with its people on his own terms. A shadow crossed his features as he remembered his recent clash with Minato over these very desires. His father's stern dismissal still echoed in his mind, a reminder of the walls that confined him despite his physical freedom. Maybe one day, Naruto whispered to himself, his gaze returning to the village below. I'll find a way to break free. With a resolute nod, Naruto pushed away from the railing and turned towards the Hokage tower. He had duties to attend to, training sessions that awaited his reluctant participation. But amidst the weight of his responsibilities, Hinata's brief glance lingered in his thoughts, a small spark of curiosity and possibility in his otherwise regimented world. Weeks later, Naruto found himself sneaking out of his secluded home, evading the watchful eyes of the guards stationed to protect him. Freedom, even for a short while, was exhilarating. He wandered through the familiar streets of Konoha, his heart pounding with a mix of excitement and nervousness. As he strolled past bustling market stalls and busy villagers, Naruto couldn't escape the wary glances and hushed whispers that followed him like shadows. He caught fragments of their conversations. Rumors about the Hokage's son being dangerous, a child apart from the others. Each word stung, a reminder of his loneliness. Lost in his thoughts, Naruto spotted a familiar face sitting alone on a weathered bench beneath the shade of a cherry blossom tree, a girl about his age. Her expression was troubled, distant. Naruto hesitated for a moment, unsure if he should approach her. But something compelled him to step closer, drawn by a shared sense of solitude. Hello? Naruto's voice was hesitant, his tone softer than usual. Startled, the girl raised her head in his direction. Who's there? Naruto settled beside her, his movements careful as if afraid to disturb the fragile peace between them. The girl studied him, surprise flickering in her lavender eyes before softening into recognition. You're the Hokage's son, what are you doing here? I could ask you the same thing. Hinata, is your name right? Naruto asked her. Hinata quietly nodded in response. The name's Naruto. He flashed her a bright smile. Why are you out here all alone? Hinata sighed softly, her gaze dropping to her clasped hands. I ran away from home, she admitted quietly. My father, he yelled at me again. She paused to wipe away a tear with her hand. Everyone expects a lot from me because I'm the heiress, but I keep on disappointing my father. Sometimes I feel like a failure. Because I'm not strong enough, not like Neji. Naruto listened intently, his empathy swelling within him. He knew all too well the weight of familial expectations and the ache of not measuring up. I know how that feels, he confessed softly, glancing away briefly. My dad expects a lot from me too, and it's because of this stupid fox inside me. Naruto frowned, absently picking up a twig to snap it in his hands. People are scared of me too, but they don't even understand how hard it is for me to live like this. Hinata looked at Naruto, a mixture of surprise and sympathy crossing her features. I'm not scared of you, Naruto, she said earnestly, her voice low. Naruto met her gaze, touched by her sincerity. For the first time in a long while, he felt a flicker of hope, a tentative connection forming between them. Thanks, Hinata. That means a lot, he replied, a small smile tugging at his lips. You shouldn't listen to what others say about you. You're strong in your own way. Just believe in yourself, you know? Hinata's cheeks colored faintly, warmth spreading through her at his words. Thank you, Naruto. I'll try my best. With a gentle nod, Naruto stood up, offering his hand to her. Come on, I'll walk you back home, he offered, his voice gentle but firm. And remember, you can do it. Even if they don't believe in you, I do. Hinata hesitated for a moment before placing her hand in his, feeling a surge of gratitude and newfound determination. Together, they walked through the village streets, the weight of their shared burdens lightened by the presence of each other's company. As they reached the gates of the Hyuga estate, Hinata reluctantly withdrew her hand from Naruto's. "Thank you, Naruto," she murmured softly, a shy smile playing on her lips. Naruto grinned back at her, a genuine warmth in his eyes. "Anytime, Hinata." With a final nod, they parted ways, each carrying a newfound sense of connection and hope in their hearts. Naruto watched her disappear into the estate grounds before turning to head back home, the village around him suddenly feeling a little less daunting. Hinata Hyuga stood nervously outside the entrance of the Konoha Ninja Academy, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Dressed in her comfortable-looking clothes, her pale eyes scanned the bustling courtyard, taking in the sights and sounds of her new surroundings. She adjusted her headband nervously, feeling anxious about the impending proceedings for the day. As she hesitated at the threshold, a voice interrupted her thoughts. "Hey, you're our new teammate, right?" Hinata turned to see a girl with vibrant pink hair smiling warmly at her. Yes," Hinata replied softly. "I'm Hinata Hyuga. I'm Sakura Haruno," the girl introduced herself cheerfully. "Nice to meet you, Hinata. Are you excited for our first day as a team?" Hinata nodded shyly, grateful for Sakura's friendly demeanor. I hope I can do well," she admitted hesitantly, her gaze drifting towards the academy doors. "Don't worry," Sakura reassured her with a reassuring smile. "We'll do great together." Before Hinata could respond, another figure approached silently beside Sakura. His dark hair and intense gaze marked him as Sasuke Uchiha, a name Hinata recognized from village whispers and her own training sessions. His presence exuded a quiet confidence that contrasted sharply with Sakura's outgoing nature. "Hinata Hyuga, right?" Sasuke's voice was cool and composed as he spoke, his eyes assessing her with a hint of curiosity. Hinata nodded, feeling a surge of nervousness under Sasuke's scrutiny. "Yes, I'm pleased to meet you," she managed, her voice faltering slightly. Sakura interjected smoothly, sensing Hinata's discomfort. "We're all in this together, Hinata. Sasuke's serious, but he's a great teammate." Sasuke inclined his head slightly in acknowledgement, his demeanor reserved yet respectful. "We have a lot to learn," he remarked quietly, his eyes flickering towards the academy's doors. As they entered the building together, Hinata found herself caught between Sakura's warmth and Sasuke's quiet intensity. The academy buzzed with activity as students settled into their seats, their sensei, Iruka Amino, preparing to commence the day's lessons. Throughout the day, Hinata navigated the challenges of academy life with a mixture of determination and uncertainty. She found herself drawn to Sakura's enthusiasm and Sasuke's focused demeanor, each offering a different perspective on the path of becoming a shinobi. During a break between classes, Sakura turned to Hinata with a friendly smile. "You're doing great, Hinata. Don't be too hard on yourself," she offered kindly, noticing Hinata's quiet reflection. Hinata nodded gratefully, her earlier nerves easing under Sakura's encouragement. "Thank you, Sakura. I want to do my best." Sasuke, standing nearby, observed their interaction with a hint of interest. "It's good to set high standards," he remarked calmly, his gaze briefly meeting Hinata's before turning away. As the day progressed, the trio exchanged more conversation, discussing their aspirations and interests. Sakura eagerly shared her dream of becoming a medic to save lives, while Sasuke spoke quietly about his desire to follow in the footsteps of his late brother, who had perished in the last war. "I want to be strong," Sasuke admitted, his voice carrying a hint of determination. "Itachi was the best shinobi I knew. I have to live up to that." Hinata listened intently, sensing the weight of Sasuke's words. You must miss him," she ventured softly, her gaze sympathetic. Sasuke nodded, his expression briefly clouded with memories. "Every day," he admitted quietly. Their conversation drifted to the challenges of their training and the upcoming lessons at the academy. Hinata found herself opening up more, sharing her own struggles with mastering the techniques expected of her as a Hyuga clan member. "I have to prove myself," Hinata confessed, her voice tinged with determination. "Naruto, he told me I can't give up." Sakura and Sasuke exchanged glances, their curiosity piqued by Hinata's mention of Naruto. "Who's Naruto?" Sakura asked gently, sensing Hinata's hesitation. Hinata hesitated briefly, unsure how much to reveal about her brief encounter with Naruto. He's someone who believes in me," she replied softly, her gaze drifting towards the window. Well, my old man wanted me to be a farmer like him, Sakura said, leaning on the desk. He doesn't really approve of me becoming a shinobi, but I have to follow my heart. Their conversation was interrupted as Iruka called the class back to order, signaling the end of their break. The trio returned to their seats, each lost in their own thoughts as they prepared to resume their studies. As the bell signaled the end of the day's classes, Hinata gathered her belongings, reflecting on the challenges and opportunities that lay ahead. As she walked alongside Sakura and Sasuke towards the academy gates, she couldn't help but feel a renewed sense of purpose. The bond forged in their first day together marked the beginning of a new chapter in her journey, a journey guided by friendship, ambition, and the echoes of Naruto's encouraging words that continued to resonate in her heart. The sun hung high in the azure sky, casting its warm light over the training grounds of Konoha. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the surrounding trees, creating a serene backdrop for the gathering of esteemed village elders. Minato Namikaze, the fourth Hokage, stood at the forefront, his eyes fixed on the center of the field where his son, Naruto, was preparing to demonstrate his progress. Among the spectators were Tsunade, Danzo, and a few other elders, their expressions ranging from curiosity to skepticism. Minato's gaze, however, remained stern and focused, masking a blend of concern and expectation. "Begin," Minato commanded, his voice steady. Naruto stepped forward, his youthful face determined. With a swift motion, he formed the hand signs for the Shadow Clone Jutsu. Multiple Narutos appeared in puffs of smoke, surrounding the original in a tight formation. The clones moved in perfect unison, their hands working together to form a single, swirling sphere of chakra. Rasengan. Naruto ran forward, thrusting the powerful jutsu into a nearby training dummy. The wooden figure exploded on impact, splintering into fragments that flew in all directions. The gathered elders murmured among themselves, impressed by the precision and power of the technique. Next, Naruto engaged in a friendly spar with a Chunin. His movements were swift and fluid, a testament to his rigorous taijutsu training. The two combatants exchanged blows, Naruto's agility and strength on full display. Despite his smaller stature, Naruto held his ground, landing several decisive strikes that left the Chunin struggling to keep up. As the spar concluded, the Chunin bowed in acknowledgement of Naruto's skills. The elders clapped politely, their approval evident. However, Minato's face remained impassive, his eyes narrowing slightly. "That's enough," Minato announced, his tone carrying an edge of disapproval. "Naruto, come here." Naruto approached his father, his face flushed with exertion and pride. "What did you think, Dad?" he asked, his voice brimming with hope. Minato's eyes were cold, his words cutting. "Your Rasengan was sloppy, and your taijutsu lacks discipline. You're not taking your training seriously." Naruto's expression fell, replaced by a flash of anger. "I'm doing my best. Why can't you ever trust me? Why can't you see how hard I'm trying?" The elders exchanged uneasy glances, the tension palpable. Minato's jaw tightened, his voice growing colder. "Don't raise your voice at me, Naruto. If this is your best, then it isn't good enough." Dismissed. Naruto's fists clenched at his sides, his eyes burning with frustration. He turned sharply on his heel and stormed off, leaving a trail of dust in his wake. Once Naruto was out of earshot, Minato turned to Danzo, who had been watching the exchange with a calculating gaze. "We have more important matters to discuss," Minato said, his tone shifting to one of business. Danzo nodded, his face inscrutable. "The representatives from Suna will be arriving soon. This alliance is crucial, but I still have my reservations." Minato's expression softened slightly, his thoughts momentarily drifting to his son's angry departure. "Suna's support is essential for our future stability. Their cooperation could tip the balance in our favor." Danzo's eyes narrowed. "True, but alliances are fragile. We must be cautious, especially with the recent hostilities from Kumo." Minato sighed, the weight of leadership pressing heavily on him. Kumo had been encroaching on Konoha's occupied land recently, and it was only getting more frequent with the passing days. "I know, Danzo. But we must take this step. The future of Konoha depends on it." As they discussed the impending arrival of the Suna representatives, Minato's thoughts lingered on Naruto. He hoped that his harsh words would drive his son to greater heights, but a nagging doubt gnawed at him. Had he been too severe? Only time would tell if his approach would forge a stronger shinobi or drive a deeper wedge between them. The next day, the door to the Hokage's office opened with a creak, revealing Hyuga and his daughter, Hinata. Minato Namikaze, the fourth Hokage, looked up from his desk, his eyes briefly softening at the sight of the young girl. The room was already occupied by a few high-ranking elders, their faces stern and filled with unspoken worries. "Ah, Hiyashi," Minato greeted. "Thank you for coming. And Hinata, it's nice to see you." Hinata bowed politely. "Thank you, Hokage-sama." Hiyashi nodded. "Minato, I hope you don't mind. I brought Hinata along, but I don't want her to hear the discussions we're about to have." Minato's gaze shifted to Naruto, who was standing near the window looking out at the village below. "Naruto, why don't you keep Hinata company in the next room? We'll be a while." Naruto turned, his expression brightening. "Sure thing, Dad." As Naruto and Hinata left the room, Minato watched them closely, a flicker of concern crossing his face. Naruto doesn't need more distractions at this stage of his development. Hiyashi waved his hand dismissively. "Let them be, Minato. They need to interact with others their age. Besides, I don't want Hinata overhearing our discussion." Minato sighed, reluctantly nodding. "I suppose you're right." In the next room, Naruto and Hinata sat on the floor with a board game spread out between them. Hinata's face was alight with excitement as she made her next move. Naruto scratched his head. "You're really good at this, Hinata. How do you keep winning?" Hinata giggled softly. "I've always liked board games. My father says they help with strategic thinking." Naruto grinned, making his move. "Well, you're definitely a lot better at it than I am." They continued to play, the room filled with the sounds of their pieces clinking on the board. "So, how's life at the academy?" Naruto asked, genuinely curious. Hinata's eyes sparkled. "It's been really exciting. I've made some good friends. My teammates, Sakura and Sasuke, are really talented. Sakura wants to become a medic nin to save lives, and Sasuke, well, he's following in his brother Itachi's footsteps." Naruto's smile faltered a little. "That's great. I wish I could go to the academy too, but Dad has me training with Jiraiya-sensei and B-sensei all the time." Hinata tilted her head. "What kind of training do you do?" Naruto's eyes lit up. "Mostly learning to control the Nine Tails chakra. It's really tough, but Jiraiya-sensei says I'm making progress. Sometimes, it feels like I'll never get it right." Hinata reached out, touching his hand lightly. "I believe in you, Naruto. You'll get there." Naruto looked at her, surprised by the warmth in her voice. "Thanks, Hinata. That means a lot." Back in the main room, the atmosphere was heavy with tension. Minato Namikaze, the fourth Hokage, stood behind his desk, his usual calm demeanor slightly strained as he sifted through the latest intelligence reports. The mood in the room was tense, the air thick with unspoken concerns. To his right, Tsunade sat with her arms crossed, her brow furrowed in contemplation. Across from her, Danzo Shimura sat stoically, his face unreadable as ever. Minato finally broke the silence, his blue eyes scanning the faces of his advisors. "Kumo has doubled its military expenditure in the past year," he began, his voice steady but laced with underlying worry. "They're exploiting any loopholes in the restrictions we imposed on them to build up their forces. Their so-called National Guard now rivals the size of any of our shinobi divisions." Tsunade leaned forward, her expression skeptical. "Clever way to avoid expanding your actual military. And you're still considering a diplomatic approach, Minato? They're clearly preparing for something." Minato nodded slowly, weighing his words. "I know how it looks, Tsunade. But if we move too aggressively, we could give them exactly what they want, an excuse to strike first. We've occupied their lands for years, and they've bided their time. If we're not careful, we could find ourselves facing a unified front from both Kumo and Iwa." Danzo's single visible eye narrowed, his voice cold and calculating. "You're too soft, Hokage. We should strike preemptively. Show them that Konoha's strength hasn't waned since the war. Crush this National Guard before they even have a chance to mobilize." Minato shook his head, though not in disagreement, more in a gesture of caution. "If we strike without proof, we risk everything we've built. Our image, our alliances. Iwa is watching closely. They've been paying reparations for years, and they're just waiting for an excuse to stop." Tsunade sighed, leaning back in her chair. So, what's the plan? We just sit and wait until they march into our occupied territories? Hope they come to the negotiating table out of the goodness of their hearts? Minato's gaze was steady, his tone firm. We need time. Time to strengthen our own forces. Time to prepare Naruto for what's to come. He's still not ready for the battlefield, and we can't afford to deploy him recklessly. Danzo scoffed softly. You're coddling the boy. He's the only Jinchuriki we have, and we've invested too much into him to let him sit idle while Kumo sharpens its blade. Minato's eyes flashed with a rare hint of anger. He's 13, Danzo. 13. I won't send him into war until he's ready, until he can control the Nine Tails completely. Do you want another disaster like the Third Hokage's era? I won't turn him into a weapon to be wielded recklessly. The room fell silent again, the weight of Minato's words lingering in the air. Tsunade finally spoke, her voice softer. So, what's our move then? You said the negotiations are going nowhere. Minato nodded, his expression thoughtful. We need to pressure them subtly, remind them why they signed that treaty in the first place. I'm planning to send a delegation to Kumo, but not just any delegation. We'll send a team led by someone they respect, someone with the authority to show we're serious about peace, but also with the strength to remind them of what's at stake. Hiyashi raised an eyebrow. Who do you have in mind? Minato looked at him directly. Jiraiya-sensei. He's well known and respected, even in Kumo. He'll take a small team of our best, not to provoke but to demonstrate our readiness and our intent. Danzo's frown deepened. You're putting too much faith in their honor, Hokage. They'll see it as a sign of weakness. Minato met his gaze unflinchingly. No, they'll see it as a sign that we're willing to talk, but that we won't be bullied. And in the meantime, we'll bolster our defenses and gather more intelligence. If they think they can take back what they lost, they're going to have to think twice. Tsunade nodded slowly. And what about Naruto? He can't stay in the village forever. The boy needs to experience the world outside, see what he's supposed to protect. Minato sighed. I know. Jiraiya has been training him, but he needs more. I'm planning to send him out on some missions, under close supervision. He needs to grow stronger, but he also needs to understand the cost of his power. Hiyashi's voice was softer now, almost contemplative. You're playing a dangerous game, Minato. One wrong move, and we could be looking at another war. Minato's gaze was unwavering. I know, but if we don't play this carefully, we might find ourselves fighting a battle on two fronts. We need to buy time, gather our strength, and prepare for the worst. But until then, we have to hope that cooler heads prevail. The room fell silent again, the tension thick and palpable. Outside, the village bustled with life, unaware of the storm clouds gathering on the horizon. Minato glanced out the window, his expression unreadable. We're not giving in to their demands, he said quietly but firmly. But we're not going to let them push us into a war we're not ready for. Not yet. The room fell silent, the tense mood reflecting on everyone present. Back in the adjacent room, Naruto and Hinata continued their game, their conversation becoming more relaxed. So, do you think you'll make it through the Chunin exams? Naruto asked. Hinata blushed slightly. I hope so. I've been training really hard. My father expects a lot from me. Naruto nodded. Yeah, I know what that's like. My dad, he expects a lot from me too. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the bond between them growing stronger with each passing second. As the game came to an end, with Hinata once again the victor, Naruto laughed. Alright, you win again. Next time, I'll get you. Hinata smiled, her eyes shining with warmth. I'll be looking forward to it, Naruto. In the main room, Minato and the elders continued their grave discussions, unaware of the small yet significant bond forming between their children. A bond that would soon face trials of its own in the turbulent times ahead. In the aftermath of the last war, Konoha imposed stringent terms of surrender upon the defeated Kumogakure, among them a demand that would shape the destiny of the young Jinchuriki, Naruto Uzumaki. Kumo, known for its fierce and unyielding spirit, had prepared to unleash the terrifying power of its own Jinchuriki, Killer Bee and Yugito Ni, during the conflict. Yet, before these fearsome weapons could be deployed, the war was over, leaving Kumo's ambitions thwarted and its secrets exposed. It was during the tense negotiations that followed the war's end that Konoha first learned of Kumo's remarkable achievements. Within the hidden village of the clouds, a rigorous and clandestine training program had been established for their Jinchuriki. Through it, Bee and Yugito had not only mastered their tailed beasts but had achieved a rare and unprecedented harmony with them. This feat, previously thought impossible, intrigued Konoha's leadership and stirred a hope that they could similarly mold their own young Jinchuriki into a weapon of unparalleled power. With the ink barely dry on the peace agreement, Konoha moved swiftly to seize this advantage, capturing the two Jinchuriki with the intent of integrating them into their own military ranks. However, Kumo, battered but not broken, managed to negotiate their return, though not without a heavy price. As part of the accord, Killer Bee was bound by honor and duty to travel to Konoha and personally oversee Naruto's training, guiding the boy in mastering the immense power that stirred within him. Under the vigilant eyes of Konoha's guardians and bound by restraints, both physical and metaphorical, that spoke to the fragile trust between the villages, Killer Bee made frequent journeys to the Leaf, his presence a reminder of both Kumo's strength and its capitulation. There were times when the mantle of this duty fell to Yugito Ni, who, though equally skilled, carried an air of quiet reserve, a stark contrast to Bee's exuberant persona. Together, they sought to impart the wisdom of their hard-earned harmony to Naruto, attempting to mold him not just into a weapon, but into a master of his fate, capable of standing as the shield and sword of Konoha in the turbulent times that loomed on the horizon. The morning sun cast long shadows as Team 7 assembled at Konoha's main gate. Sakura, Sasuke, and Hinata stood at attention, excitement barely contained as they awaited their client. Kakashi Hitaki, their sensei, leaned casually against the gatepost, his ever-present book in hand. Sakura glanced at her teammates, her voice filled with enthusiasm. "Our first C-rank mission. Can you believe it?" Sasuke smirked, adjusting his pack. "It's about time we got a real mission. I was thinking we were going to look for missing cats forever." Hinata sighed, placing a hand on Sasuke's shoulder. "Looking for people's pets is also very important. Pets are like family." "Yeah," Sakura chimed in. "You'd feel really bad if you lost your sibling, wouldn't why?" Catching sight of Hinata frantically waving her hands behind Sasuke, Sakura stopped talking as soon as she began, sweating nervously as she quickly realizing what she was about to say and to whom. Sasuke only fixed her a stern glare, grunting as he walked past her towards Kakashi, who was still leaning against the post. Kakashi looked up from his book, his visible eye crinkling in a smile. "Remember, our primary objective is to ensure Kenta reaches the village safely. Stay alert and follow my lead." At that moment, Kenta, a middle-aged merchant with a sturdy build and a serious expression, arrived. He nodded curtly to the team. "I hope you're all prepared. The road to the village can be dangerous." Kakashi nodded. "We're ready. Let's move out." The journey began smoothly, with the team maintaining a brisk pace. The road wound through lush forests and over gentle hills, the air filled with the sounds of chirping birds and rustling leaves. The team was alert but relaxed, enjoying the camaraderie of their first significant mission. As the group progressed, the surrounding areas gradually began to lose their vibrance, bush forests of trees replaced with burnt-out husks, and the wildlife dwindled in their numbers. Sakura, unable to contain her curiosity, looked around and spoke up. "Sensei, why does this area look so bad?" Kakashi's eye flickered up from his book. This region saw a lot of conflict during the last Great War. Many villages were destroyed or abandoned. Sasuke frowned, his dark eyes scanning the horizon. "It's hard to believe so much destruction happened here." Hinata activated her Byakugan, her gaze sweeping the area. "I can see remnants of old buildings and graves." The weight of her words settled over the group, and they continued in silence. The further they traveled, the more evident the scars of war became. Burnt-out structures stood like silent sentinels, and the occasional shattered kunai or discarded piece of armor lay half-buried in the dirt. Sakura broke the silence, her voice filled with a mix of curiosity and concern. "Sensei, did you ever fight in this area?" Kakashi nodded, his expression unreadable. "Yes, a long time ago. It was a different time." Sasuke's eyes narrowed. "Is this what we have to look forward to as shinobi? Endless war?" Kakashi sighed. "Not if we can help it. Our job is to protect and preserve peace, even if it means we have to fight to do so." Sasuke went over his sensei's words in his mind. He knew what he was signing up for by joining the academy, but seeing the effects of war with his own eyes shook him. His foot struck an object embedded into the soil. Bending low, he discovered it was a kunai partially covered in dirt. Memories of his late brother came back to him as he studied the weapon, the longing expression permanently etched into his youthful face. This is the sacrifice Itachi made for the village. Hinata's voice was soft but firm. I am sorry you had to go through all that, Kakashi-sensei. It's my duty, Kakashi replied. And someday, you may find yourself faced with the same decisions I had to make. I can only hope you'll be ready to face those challenges when they arise. When they finally reached the village, the sight that greeted them was sobering. Many buildings were in disrepair, and the villagers moved about with a sense of weariness, their faces etched with lines of hardship. Kenta sighed, looking around with a mixture of sadness and resignation. This village was once prosperous. Now, it's a shadow of its former self. Kakashi nodded. We'll stay here tonight and head back in the morning. As they settled in, Team 7 couldn't help but notice the scars left by war. Children played in the streets, but their laughter was subdued. Old men and women sat quietly, their eyes haunted by memories of better times. Sakura couldn't take it anymore. Sensei, how can they live like this? It's so depressing. Kakashi's voice was soft but firm. They survive because they have to. It's not easy, but they endure. That's the strength of these people. Sasuke clenched his fists, the reality of their world sinking in. Is this what being a shinobi means? Protecting people who have already lost so much? Hinata's eyes were downcast as she whispered to herself. I didn't realize how hard it is for people outside of Konoha. Kakashi patted the Hyuga on the shoulder in an attempt to comfort her. On one hand, we're fortunate that heavy fighting has never reached our own village. But these are the ones that have to pay the cost. Sakura completed his sentence for him, a sad expression on her face as she looked around at what was left of the once vibrant village. That evening, as they gathered around a small fire in their temporary quarters, Kakashi spoke, his tone serious and contemplative. Being a shinobi isn't about glory or heroism. It's about making hard choices and protecting those who can't protect themselves. This is the reality of our world. Sakura's eyes were wide, her earlier enthusiasm replaced by a heavy sense of responsibility. But I thought, we were supposed to be heroes. Kakashi shook his head, his one visible eye filled with a mixture of sadness and resolve. We're not heroes. We're soldiers. Our job is to ensure that what happened here doesn't happen to anywhere else in our nation. It's a harsh truth, but it's one we must accept. Sasuke's voice was quiet, his usual confidence shaken. We're prepared to shoulder our burden. Hinata nodded, her resolve hardening. We will keep training hard. To protect the people we care about. Kakashi smiled behind his mask, a rare, genuine expression. That's the spirit. Now, get some rest. We head back at dawn. The next morning, the team gathered their things and prepared to leave the village. Kenta thanked them for their protection, his gratitude evident despite the somber atmosphere. As they set out on the return journey, the weight of their experiences hung over them. The excitement of their first mission had given way to a deeper understanding of the world they lived in, a world where war left scars that took generations to heal. Sakura broke the silence, her voice thoughtful. I think I understand now. Why we need to be strong. Sasuke nodded. To protect those who can't protect themselves. To prevent this from happening again. Hinata smiled softly, her eyes filled with determination. We'll do our best. Together. It's our duty. Sakura added, smiling at her teammates. Kakashi looked at his team, pride swelling in his chest. They were young, but they were learning. They were becoming true shinobi. Back in Konoha, preparations for the Chunin exams were in full swing. Minato Namikaze, the fourth Hokage, stood with Kasuke Rasa, discussing the details of the upcoming event. We're glad to have Tsuna's participation, Minato said, his tone diplomatic and welcoming. Rasa nodded, his expression serious. This alliance is important. We need to show unity, especially in these times of tension. As they talked, Naruto, standing nearby, spotted Gaara and waved enthusiastically. Gaara, with his striking red hair and cold eyes, glared back, his expression unwelcoming. Naruto frowned to himself. What's his problem? Minato beckoned Naruto to join them, placing a hand on Naruto's shoulder. Naruto, come here. I'd like you to meet Gaara officially. Naruto approached, trying to keep his tone friendly and open. Hi, I'm Naruto. Gaara's reply was icy, his gaze piercing. I know who you are. Naruto's frown deepened, confusion and frustration mingling on his face. Why are you so cold? Minato interjected, hoping to ease the tension. Gaara, Naruto is like you. He's a Jinchuriki. Gaara's eyes narrowed further, his voice filled with bitterness. That doesn't make us friends. As the conversation continued, Naruto heard Kurama's voice in his head, speaking to the one-tailed Shukaku inside Gaara. It's been a while, Tanuki. What are you talking about? Naruto asked aloud, bewildered. Kurama's voice was cold and dismissive. It's none of your concern. Naruto was taken aback by Kurama's words, but as he remembered he was seemingly talking to himself in the presence of two rulers, he suddenly felt himself become red with embarrassment. Forgive my son, he's a bit shy. Rasa apologized on behalf of Gaara, who only looked to the side with a scoff. I understand Cage. Minato laughed. I've heard a lot about young Gaara, he is a very skilled shinobi. I only hope he can impact some of his knowledge to Naruto. Naruto felt stung by his father's words, even if he didn't really mean to cause him harm. I'm pretty skilled already, Dad, he grumbled to himself, making sure Minato could hear him. He couldn't believe the Hokage would put down his own son for some rude brat he'd never even met. Minato, as expected, didn't take kindly to Naruto's words, even though he remained calm on the outside. Naruto, it's time you reported to Jiraiya. Hokage-sama, excuse us while we discuss crucial matters, Naruto. Minato reiterated, his tone not leaving room for argument. With a polite bow, Naruto exited the room, leaving Minato alone with his guests. Gaara watched Naruto exit the room, his gaze fixed with curiosity. This kid has the 9 tails, huh? The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting a golden hue on the training ground as Naruto and B wrapped up their session. The field, littered with signs of their intense training, seemed almost peaceful in the soft glow of twilight. Naruto, drenched in sweat and panting heavily, dropped to the ground with a tired but satisfied smile. B-sensei, Naruto exclaimed breathlessly, looking up at the towering figure of his mentor. That was awesome. I've never managed to go on for so long before. B, standing nearby with his arms crossed, grinned broadly. Yeah, little man, you're on fire. You've got that spark, that desire. You did great, believe that. He gave Naruto an enthusiastic thumbs up. Your chakra control's getting tighter, like a boa constrictor. Naruto's smile widened at the praise. Really? You think so? His eyes shone with a mix of hope and excitement, but his expression faltered slightly. But, I still can't cooperate with the 9 tails like you do with the 8 tails, or like Yugito-sensei does with Maatatabi. B took a deep sip from his water bottle, then wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. He sat down beside Naruto, his voice turning more serious. Hey now, don't get down, Naruto. You're still young, just a kid. Me and Yuki didn't start like this overnight, ya know? It took years of hard work, patience, and plenty of fights. Naruto looked up at him, a flicker of hope returning to his eyes. You really think I can do it, B-sensei? B chuckled, ruffling Naruto's spiky blonde hair. Believe it, kiddo. You've got more potential than you know. Just keep grinding, keep shining, and you'll be cooperating with Kurama before you know it. Naruto beamed at the encouraging words, his previous doubts melting away. Thanks, B-sensei. It really means a lot hearing that from you. B grinned and took another swig from his water bottle. But just as he was about to swallow, Naruto's next words made him choke. I really thought it was because I'm just a no-good tree fucker. Naruto said earnestly, completely oblivious to the effect his words had on B. B coughed violently, struggling to catch his breath as water sprayed from his mouth. Wah! Naruto looked at him in concern. B-sensei, are you okay? B wiped his mouth, still coughing a bit, and stared at Naruto with wide eyes. Where the hell did you learn a word like that, kid? Naruto tilted his head, confused by B's reaction. Oh, Yugito-sensei told me. She said I'd never get my act together, 'cause I'm a no-good tree fucker that doesn't have what it takes. He mimicked her stern tone with surprising accuracy. But I'm glad to hear I've got time to learn. B slapped his hand over his face, half groaning, half laughing. That woman. She's got a real way with words, doesn't she? He looked at Naruto, who was still looking at him with innocent curiosity. Listen, Naruto, that kind of language, it's, for grown-ups, alright? So, maybe don't go around repeating stuff like that. You don't want the whole village thinking you're a little punk. Naruto blinked, then nodded seriously. Oh, okay, B-sensei. But why would being a tree fucker be so bad? I mean, I've heard Lord First did amazing things with trees all the time. B burst out laughing, clutching his stomach. Man, kid, you're something else. He wiped a tear from his eye, shaking his head. Just, take my word for it, okay? Don't use that word again. Naruto nodded vigorously. Got it. Thanks for the heads up, B-sensei. Thank goodness this kid's so stupid. B thought, relieved by Naruto's ignorance. Before B could say anything else, one of Naruto's aides approached, bowing respectfully. Naruto-sama, it's time to return to the village. The Hokage wants to go over your training schedule for next week. Naruto's shoulders slumped a little as he glanced at B. Already? But B-sensei just got here. B clapped a hand on Naruto's shoulder. Don't worry, little man. I'll be back soon enough. You just keep working hard and get stronger, alright? Naruto's face brightened again. I will. When will you come back, B-sensei? B thought for a moment. Probably next month, but Yugito-sensei will be here in a couple of weeks to check on your progress. Naruto made a face, grumbling under his breath. Yugito-sensei. B laughed loudly, the sound echoing through the training ground. She's a tough one, alright? But she means well, even if she's got a colorful way of expressing herself. Naruto puffed out his cheeks in a pout. I guess, but I like training with you better, B-sensei. B gave him a wide grin and held out his fist. Fist bump, little man. Naruto's face lit up, and he eagerly bumped his fist against B's. I'll get stronger, B-sensei, I promise. And one day, I'll be as strong as you and Yugito-sensei. B stood up, watching as Naruto was led away by his aide. You got the spirit, kid. Just keep at it. He remained there for a moment, watching the young Jinchuriki as he walked away, his mind already buzzing with ideas for their next training session. Naruto was still young, but his potential was undeniable. B smiled to himself, shaking his head as he turned to leave. Little man's gonna be a force to reckon with one day, he murmured to himself. Then, with one last look at the now empty training ground, he made his way back to the village, his thoughts lingering on the bright future of the boy he was training. In a dark forest outside Konoha, a shadowy figure moved through the trees, approaching a group of masked figures. What do you have for us? One of the figures, an Anbu from Kumo, asked, their voice low and threatening. The shadowy figure, stepping into the dim light, was revealed to be Mizuki. He nodded, a sly grin on his face. 2 Jinchuriki are in Konoha. Nohara, the Anbu replied, his voice laced with shock and disbelief. Mizuki shook his head, a sly smile spreading across his lips. Not exactly, someone else. He paused to study the cloaked figures before him, their expressions hidden underneath their masks. The Casecage's son, Jinchuriki of the One Tail, is currently in the Hidden Leaf. It's for a diplomatic visit between our two nations' rulers. The Anbu leader went over Mizuki's words carefully. The sand in the leaf. Just how deep is this new alliance? He nodded, satisfaction in his tone. Good. Giving a signal to one of his men, a small black pouch was tossed to Mizuki. Here's your payment. Mizuki frowned as he took the pouch, feeling its weight. This is only half. We agreed on more. The Anbu's voice grew stern, a hint of menace in their tone. You'll get the rest when you provide me more useful information. As the Anbu disappeared into the shadows, Mizuki pocketed the money, muttering to himself. I'll get what's mine. He turned and made his way back to Konoha, knowing that the information he had given could change the course of the coming conflict. But as he looked at the bag of money in his hands, Mizuki decided that it was all worth it. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm, golden hue over the dense forest. The chirping of birds and the rustling of leaves created a symphony that blended harmoniously with the sound of Naruto's labored breathing. He stood on a rocky outcrop, his eyes squeezed shut in concentration, beads of sweat trickling down his face. His hands were clasped together in a meditative pose, fingers forming intricate seals. Focus, Naruto. Feel the energy around you, let it flow through you. Jiraiya's voice called out, firm yet encouraging. Naruto opened his eyes, which now gleamed with the distinct, amphibian-like iridescence of sage mode. He could feel the nature chakra coursing through his veins, a powerful yet volatile force that threatened to overwhelm him if he lost concentration. His vision sharpened, the world around him coming into startling clarity. He could see every leaf, every insect, every minute detail in the forest. "How's it going?" Jiraiya asked, standing a few paces away with his arms crossed. His expression was a mix of sternness and pride. Naruto gritted his teeth, feeling the immense pressure building within him. I'm doing it, pervy sage. But it's hard to keep it steady." Jiraiya raised an eyebrow. "Don't call me that. And remember, it's not just about holding it. You need to be able to move and fight while maintaining sage mode." Naruto nodded, trying to keep his breathing even. He took a cautious step forward, then another, testing his balance. Each movement felt amplified, the nature chakra heightening his senses and physical capabilities. He felt a surge of exhilaration mixed with trepidation. Good, Jiraiya said, watching intently. "Now, try a simple attack. Channel the nature chakra into your strike." Naruto took a deep breath, focusing the energy into his fist. He thrust his arm forward, releasing a wave of energy that caused the ground to tremble and leaves to scatter. The sheer power of the attack left a small crater in the ground before him. "Not bad," Jiraiya remarked, a hint of a smile tugging at his lips. "But you need to control it better. Too much energy and you'll exhaust yourself quickly." Naruto's face scrunched up in concentration. I know. It's just hard to balance it all." Jiraiya's expression softened. "You're doing great, Naruto. Remember, this is all about control and endurance. You've got the power, now you just need to harness it." Naruto nodded, determination flaring in his eyes. He continued to practice, alternating between attacks and defensive maneuvers, each one more precise than the last. However, as the seconds ticked by, he could feel his grasp on sage mode beginning to slip. His breathing grew more ragged, the strain becoming evident. "Come on, just a bit longer," Jiraiya urged, his tone more insistent. "Push through, Naruto." Naruto gritted his teeth, his muscles trembling with effort. He tried to hold onto the nature chakra, but it was like trying to grasp water in his hands. Finally, with a pained gasp, he released the energy, collapsing to his knees. The toad-like features of sage mode faded from his eyes, leaving him feeling drained but accomplished. 4 minutes, Jiraiya said, helping Naruto to his feet. "Not bad at all. But we need more. Think of all the people who are counting on you." Naruto wiped the sweat from his brow, looking up at his mentor with a mix of exhaustion and determination. "I won't let everyone down. I promise." Jiraiya clapped him on the back, a proud smile on his face. "I know you won't. Now, let's call it a day. You need to rest and recover for tomorrow." As they made their way back to their camp, the forest around them seemed to settle into a peaceful twilight. Naruto's thoughts drifted to the Chunin exams and to Hinata, who would soon face her own challenges. He clenched his fists, vowing to master sage mode not just for himself, but for everyone who believed in him. The journey back was quiet, each step filled with the weight of their thoughts. Jiraiya glanced at Naruto, his expression thoughtful. "You know, Naruto, mastering sage mode isn't just about power. It's about balance, understanding, and connecting with the world around you. You're making great progress, but remember, it's a journey, not a race." Naruto looked up at Jiraiya, absorbing his words. "I understand, Ero Sennin. I'll keep working hard. For everyone." Jiraiya nodded, a satisfied smile on his lips. "Good. Now, let's get some food and rest. Tomorrow's another big day." As they approached their campsite, the fireflies began to emerge, their gentle glow adding a touch of magic to the serene evening. Naruto felt a sense of calm wash over him, the fatigue of his training day mingling with a renewed sense of purpose. The path ahead was long and challenging, but he was ready to face it head-on, with Jiraiya's guidance and the support of his friend. The next day, the Chunin exam arena was abuzz with anticipation. The audience, a mix of villagers, shinobi, and dignitaries from various nations, murmured with excitement. The midday sun cast sharp shadows across the arena floor, creating a stark contrast to the vibrant colors of the spectators' clothing. In the center of it all stood 2 genin, poised and ready. Sasuke Uchiha and Temari of the Sand. Sasuke's dark eyes were focused, his stance relaxed yet ready. His heart pounded with a mix of adrenaline and determination. Across from him, Temari stood with her giant fan resting on her shoulder, a smirk playing on her lips. Her confident demeanor radiated arrogance, and she exuded an air of superiority that irked Sasuke. Looks like I got an Uchiha, Temari said, her voice carrying a mocking tone. This should be interesting. Sasuke's eyes narrowed. We'll see who's interesting. The proctor raised his hand, signaling the start of the match. Begin. Temari wasted no time, swinging her fan open with a flourish. Kamaitachi. She sent a powerful gust of wind towards Sasuke, the force of it slicing through the air. Sasuke leapt to the side, dodging the initial attack with ease. He darted forward, his speed impressive, closing the distance between them in an instant. He aimed a swift kick at Temari, who blocked it with the edge of her fan, using it like a shield. You're fast, Temari remarked, pushing him back with a sweep of her fan. But it's going to take more than speed to beat me. Sasuke landed lightly on his feet, his Sharingan activated, analyzing her movements. I'm just getting started. Temari grinned, twirling her fan. Good. I was hoping for a challenge. She swung her fan again, this time unleashing a more concentrated blast of wind. Sasuke countered with a series of hand signs. Fire style. Fireball jutsu. A massive ball of flame erupted from his mouth, colliding with the wind attack. The two forces clashed, creating a whirlwind of fire and air that swirled violently. The spectators leaned forward, captivated by the spectacle. Among them, Sakura watched with bated breath, her hands clenched into fists. She knew how much this fight meant to Sasuke. Temari's eyes widened momentarily at the power of Sasuke's fire jutsu, but she quickly regained her composure. Not bad, but let's see how you handle this. She leapt into the air, positioning her fan beneath her feet, and soared high above the arena. Wind Scythe Jutsu. Blades of wind rained down upon Sasuke, cutting through the ground and sending debris flying. Sasuke moved with lightning speed, dodging the onslaught, his Sharingan allowing him to predict the paths of the wind blades. He launched himself into the air, meeting Temari at her level. Chidori. Sasuke's hand crackled with lightning chakra, a high-pitched screech filling the air as he thrust his hand towards Temari. Temari's eyes widened in surprise. She swung her fan with all her might, creating a powerful gust that redirected the Chidori's trajectory. The force of the wind sent Sasuke spiraling back to the ground, where he landed in a crouch, skidding to a halt. That was close, Temari thought, landing gracefully a few meters away. I should pay more attention to this guy. Sasuke rose to his feet, breathing heavily. He could feel the strain of using the Sharingan and Chidori, but he wasn't about to back down. You're not the only one with tricks. He formed a series of hand signs and created several shadow clones, each one dashing towards Temari from different angles. Temari's eyes flicked between the clones, her fan ready. She swung it in a wide arc, generating a massive gust of wind that dispersed the clones. Is that all you've got? She taunted, but her eyes remained vigilant, scanning for the real Sasuke. Suddenly, the ground beneath her erupted as Sasuke burst from below, having used one of his clones as a distraction. He aimed a punch at her midsection, but Temari reacted quickly, blocking it with the handle of her fan. She countered with a kick, catching Sasuke off guard and sending him tumbling backward. Sasuke rolled to his feet, wincing slightly. He could see the smirk on Temari's face and it only fueled his determination. He had to think of a new strategy. You Uchiha sure have a lot of pride, Temari said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Look where your high-handedness has gotten you. Sasuke's eyes blazed with intensity. It's not just pride. It's about proving myself. Temari's expression softened slightly, as if she understood his words. But it lasted only a moment. She raised her fan again. Then show me what you're made of. Sasuke charged forward, his mind racing. He needed to outmaneuver her, to find a way past her defenses. As he closed the distance, he feinted to the left, then quickly shifted to the right, aiming a series of rapid punches and kicks. Temari blocked and parried, her fan moving with incredible speed and precision. The two engaged in a flurry of close-quarters combat, their movements a blur to the untrained eye. Sasuke could feel his stamina waning, but he pushed on, driven by sheer willpower. Finally, Temari found an opening. She swung her fan with a powerful upward strike, catching Sasuke off balance and sending him sprawling to the ground. She pointed the tip of her fan at his throat, her breathing heavy. It's over, Sasuke, she said, her tone a mix of triumph and respect. Sasuke lay on the ground, his chest heaving, the realization of his defeat sinking in. He looked up at Temari, his eyes still burning with determination. Not yet? Before he could make another move, the proctor stepped in. Enough. The match is over. Temari wins. The crowd erupted into applause, cheering for the impressive display of skill from both combatants. Temari stepped back, lowering her fan and offering Sasuke a hand. He hesitated for a moment, then accepted, allowing her to help him to his feet. Stand proud, Temari said, her voice softer now. You were incredible. Sasuke nodded, his expression a mix of frustration and respect. As were you. As he walked back to his teammates, Sasuke couldn't help but feel a deep sense of resolve. This defeat was just a stepping stone, a lesson to learn from. He glanced up at the stands, where his parents watched with concern and admiration. I'll get stronger, Sasuke thought to himself. For myself and for my family. The Hyuga compound, a sprawling estate of traditional architecture, radiated an air of stoic tranquility. The courtyard, filled with meticulously pruned bonsai trees and serene koi ponds, seemed to reflect the inner discipline of the clan itself. However, beneath the surface, tension simmered. In the main hall, Hiyashi Hyuga sat across from one of the clan's high-ranking elders, Elder Harumi. The elder's stern face, lined with age and experience, betrayed no emotion as they delved into the subject at hand. Hiyashi-sama, Harumi began, her voice steady, we must address the matter of Hinata's position within the clan. The upcoming battle has brought certain issues to light. Hiyashi's expression was one of contemplation, his fingers interlaced as he listened. I am aware, Harumi. Hinata's performance so far has been lacking. Harumi nodded, her gaze unwavering. Indeed, there are concerns about her suitability as the heiress. In fact, it has fueled the whispers among the clan members. Hiyashi's eyes darkened. What do they say? They question her strength, her resolve, Harumi replied. Many believe Neji would be a more fitting leader. His skills are unparalleled, and his potential to unify the clan is significant. Ending the side branch system by elevating him could also heal old wounds. Hiyashi leaned back, the weight of his responsibilities bearing down on him. Neji's talents are undeniable, but he carries the burden of the side branch curse. It would be a radical change. Harumi's gaze softened slightly. Radical, but perhaps necessary. The side branch system has caused much division. Neji's elevation could signify a new era for the Hyuga clan. Hiyashi remained silent, his thoughts conflicted. He knew the truth of Harumi's words, yet the idea of displacing his daughter pained him. Hinata has potential. She has shown growth, but is it enough? Harumi pressed gently. The clan needs a leader who is strong, decisive, and respected. Neji possesses those qualities. Hiyashi's eyes flickered with uncertainty. And what of Hinata? What role would she play? She could still serve the clan, Harumi suggested. Her strengths lie in her compassion and kindness, qualities that could be valuable in other capacities. Hiyashi sighed, the conflict evident in his expression. I will consider your counsel, Harumi. This decision is not one to be made lightly. Harumi nodded, satisfied that her point had been made. Thank you, Hiyashi-sama. The clan's future depends on wise leadership. As the elder took her leave, Hiyashi remained seated, lost in thought. The importance of the decision loomed over him, a delicate balance between tradition and progress. Unbeknownst to them, Hinata had been standing just outside the hall, hidden from view but within earshot. Her heart ached as she listened to the conversation, her father's words cutting deeper than any of Neji's strikes ever could. Tears welled up in her eyes as she turned away, her steps silent on the wooden floor. She had always known there were doubts about her, but hearing them spoken so plainly by her father and the elder was a crushing blow. As she slipped away into the shadows of the compound, her resolve wavered. The weight of the clan's expectations felt heavier than ever, and for the first time, she truly questioned her place within the Hyuga. The anticipation in the Chunin exam arena was palpable as the proctor announced the next match. The audience, a sea of colorful attire and eager faces, turned their attention to the center of the arena. This was the match many had been waiting for, Hinata Hyuga versus Neji Hyuga. Hinata stood at one end of the arena, her hands trembling slightly. Her lavender eyes, usually so gentle, were filled with determination and fear. She knew what was at stake, not just her reputation, but her place in the Hyuga clan. Across from her stood Neji, his demeanor cold and composed. His eyes, identical to hers in appearance, reflected a stark contrast in their emotions. "Let's get this over with," Neji said, his voice devoid of emotion. "You don't belong here, Hinata." Hinata's heart ached at his words, but she steadied herself. She had to prove herself, not just to Neji, but to her father and the entire clan. She glanced up into the stands and saw Naruto sitting beside Minato, his eyes fixed on her. His presence gave her a spark of courage. The proctor raised his hand. "Begin." Neji immediately took a defensive stance, his Byakugan activated. "I'll show you the difference between the main family and the branch family. While you keep up petty exercises in the name of training, I have to try extra hard just to be regarded with 1/10 of the attention you have on you." Hinata's heart softened at his words, but she refused to allow herself give in to her emotions. She mirrored his stance, her own Byakugan flaring to life. "I won't say I understand your pain, dog, but I won't give up, Neji." "Not this time." Neji smirked. "We'll see." The two Hyuga prodigies circled each other, their movements graceful yet tense. Neji was the first to strike, dashing forward with incredible speed. Hinata barely managed to block his first attack, their palms meeting in a clash of chakra. "You're slower than I expected," Neji taunted, pressing his advantage. "Is this the extent of your training?" Hinata gritted her teeth, deflecting his rapid strikes. "I've also trained hard, Neji. Harder than you think." Neji's attacks were relentless, each strike aimed to exploit her weaknesses. Hinata struggled to keep up, her movements increasingly desperate. "Your kindness is your downfall, Hinata. In battle, there is no room for hesitation." Hinata's mind flashed back to her training with Kakashi, to her team's encouraging words. She couldn't afford to lose now. Not when so much was at stake. She countered one of Neji's attacks, pushing him back momentarily. "You're stronger than before," Neji acknowledged, though his tone was still condescending. "But it's not enough to save you." Hinata's eyes flicked to Team 7 again. She remembered their words, their belief in her. "I won't lose. Not to you." Neji's expression hardened. "Then show me what you've got." They clashed again, their movements a blur of speed and precision. Hinata managed to land a few hits, but Neji's superior skill and experience were evident. He evaded her attacks with ease, countering with brutal efficiency. "You're holding back," Neji accused, his eyes narrowing. "Why?" Hinata's breath came in ragged gasps. "Because, you're my cousin." Neji's eyes flashed with anger. "Family means nothing in this arena. Show me your true strength, or fall." The audience watched in rapt silence as the battle intensified. Hinata's determination was admirable, but it was clear she was outmatched. Neji's attacks grew fiercer, his strikes landing with increasing frequency. "You can't win, Hinata," Neji said coldly, his hand striking her chest and sending her stumbling back. "Give up." Hinata fell to her knees, her vision swimming. She could feel her strength waning, but she couldn't give up. Not now. She looked up at Naruto, his determined expression giving her the strength to rise again. "I won't give up," she whispered, her voice trembling but resolute. "Not yet." Neji's expression darkened. "Stubbornness will only get you hurt." Hinata charged forward with renewed resolve, her movements a blend of desperation and determination. She managed to land a few more hits, but Neji countered with a devastating blow, sending her crashing to the ground. The proctor moved to intervene, but Hinata struggled to her feet, blood trickling from her mouth. "I can still fight." Neji's eyes were filled with a mixture of anger and pity. "Why do you persist? You're only prolonging your suffering." Hinata's gaze met his, unwavering. "Because I believe in myself. And I believe in my friends." Neji's face twisted with rage. "Pathetic." He struck again, this time aiming for a decisive blow. Hinata tried to block, but her strength failed her. She crumpled to the ground, her vision fading. The proctor stepped in, raising his hand. "Enough. Neji wins." The crowd erupted into mixed reactions, some cheering for Neji's victory, others murmuring in concern for Hinata. Naruto's heart sank as he watched Hinata fall, his fists clenched in frustration. Neji turned away, his expression cold. "You were never meant to be a shinobi, Hinata." But as he walked away, Hinata's voice called out to him, weak but determined. "I won't give up." Neji stopped, his back to her. Stubborn to the end, Hinata was taken to the medical bay, her injuries severe. Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura watched in silence, their hearts heavy with the weight of the day's events. In the stands, Hyuga watched his daughter being carried away, his expression unreadable. The whispers of the clan elders echoed in his mind, their doubts about Hinata's worthiness as the heiress. He felt a pang of guilt, but also a grim resolve. Decisions had to be made for the good of the clan. As the sun set over the arena, the day ended with a sense of foreboding. The Chunin exams were far from over, and the challenges ahead would only grow more intense. For Hinata, the battle had been a turning point, a painful yet necessary step in her journey. The training ground was filled with the sound of clashing kunai and grunts of effort. Naruto, drenched in sweat, struggled to keep up with Yugito's relentless attacks. Minato stood at the edge of the field, his arms crossed, eyes narrowed as he watched the two Jinchuriki spar. Beside him, Tsunade observed silently, her expression pensive. Yugito Ni moved with a lethal grace, dodging Naruto's every attack with ease. Her voice was sharp, mocking. "Come on, is that all you've got, brat? You're supposed to be the great weapon of Konoha, right?" Naruto gritted his teeth, trying to keep his frustration in check. "I'm trying, Yugito-sensei. But you're not giving me a chance." Yugito's lips curled into a smirk as she sidestepped his punch and swiftly kicked his legs out from under him, sending him sprawling to the ground. "A chance? You think you're gonna get chances in a real fight?" She leaned over him, her tone dripping with disdain. "You leaf shinobi really are spoiled, aren't you?" Minato's eyes narrowed at her words, but he held his tongue. He turned slightly towards Tsunade. "She's tough on him," he murmured. Tsunade crossed her arms. "That's what he needs, isn't it? And she's good, I'll give her that." Minato nodded thoughtfully. "She's from Yamashi, one of the outer villages. I heard she was already on missions by his age. They raise them hard out there." Yamashi. Tsunade's eyes narrowed. "One of the territories we're still holding." "Yes," Minato said quietly. "Which technically makes her a citizen of the Fire Nation." Tsunade shot him a sharp look. "Minato, don't even think about it." Minato's jaw clenched. "We can't afford to let Kumo and Iwa keep building up their military strength. We've already lost Rin, and the Nine Tails is still not under control. We need every advantage we can get. And seizing their Jinchuriki during the training session will do what, exactly? Provoke them into war?" Tsunade's voice was low but intense. "The old man may have made mistakes, but you know we can't take them on alone right now." Minato exhaled slowly, his gaze returning to the training ground. "I know, but it's frustrating. They're circumventing the restrictions we placed on them. This so-called National Guard of theirs. It's just a way to build an army under our noses. Which is why we're trying to negotiate," Tsunade reminded him. "But if we break the treaty ourselves, we'll have no leg to stand on." Back in the training field, Naruto was once again picking himself up from the dirt. His face was smeared with dust, but the fire in his eyes hadn't dimmed. "What am I supposed to learn if you just keep beating me down?" he shouted, wiping the sweat from his brow. Yugito raised her wrists, showing the chakra restraints clamped around them. "You see these? I'm holding back, kid. If you can't even handle this, then you've got a long way to go." Naruto clenched his fists. "You're not helping." "Oh, I'm sorry," Yugito sneered. "Did you want me to hold your hand and tell you everything's going to be okay? Welcome to the real world, Uzumaki. If you can't take a little rough handling in training, you'll be slaughtered out there." She circled him like a predator, her voice dripping with contempt. "When I was your age, I was already taking on missions, risking my life for my village. And here you are, whining like a child." Naruto's face flushed with anger, but he didn't retort. He knew she was trying to provoke him, and he fought to keep his temper in check. He rushed at her again, his movements more focused. But each time he thought he had an opening, she would counter him effortlessly, knocking him back to the ground. Minato watched the exchange, his expression unreadable. "She's hard on him, but maybe that's what he needs." "Maybe," Tsunade allowed. "But she's got a lot of resentment towards the leaf. That's not something you can easily change." Minato sighed, rubbing his forehead. "If only Hiruzen hadn't been so naive back then. We could have secured a much stronger position." "You can't change the past, Minato," Tsunade said firmly. "All we can do is try to manage the present. And right now, pushing too hard might break what little peace we have left." In the training ground, Yugito had Naruto pinned to the ground, her knee pressed into his back. He struggled underneath her, but she held him down effortlessly. "Stop squirming, brat. You think you can just thrash around and something will happen? If you want to avoid ending up like this, You need to listen to what I'm telling you. Naruto growled, still fighting against her hold. How am I supposed to get better if you don't give me a chance? Yugito's eyes flashed with annoyance. You think your enemies are going to give you chances? Out there, you won't get to complain. You adapt, or you die. Naruto's struggles intensified, but he was no match for her. Frustration boiled over, and he screamed, thrashing futilely. Minato, watching from the sidelines, decided he'd seen enough. That's enough for today, Yugito. Yugito glanced over at him, then released Naruto with a disdainful snort. Go home, brat. You're wasting my time. Naruto scrambled to his feet, glaring at her, his eyes red with unshed tears of frustration. Without a word, he turned and ran off, his head down. Minato watched his sons retreating back, his heart heavy. Thank you for your time, Yugito. You're dismissed. Yugito stood, bowing stiffly. Hokage-sama. Her voice was cold, almost mechanical. With a final glare at Minato, she turned on her heel and walked off, the guards falling into step behind her. Tsunade watched her go, then turned to Minato. You can't blame her, you know. I don't, Minato said quietly. But we're running out of time. If we don't find a way to strengthen ourselves, we'll find a way, Tsunade said firmly. Just don't go doing anything stupid, alright? Minato nodded, his eyes still on the path Naruto had taken. I just hope the negotiations go well. For all our sakes. They stood in silence for a moment, the tension hanging heavy in the air. As Yugito disappeared from view, Minato couldn't shake the feeling that things were about to get much worse before they got better. The office of the Raikage, perched atop the highest tower in Kumogakure, overlooked the village with an air of authority. The large windows offered a panoramic view of the rugged mountain terrain, a reminder of the village's strength and resilience. Inside, the atmosphere was tense as the Raikage, presided over a critical meeting. The room was filled with the most influential figures from Kumogakure, including Ai's top advisors and generals. On the opposite side of the large oak table sat the diplomatic team from Konoha, their faces a mix of determination and unease. The leader of the Konoha delegation, a seasoned diplomat named Shikaku Nara, maintained a calm exterior, his sharp mind assessing every nuance of the discussion. Raikage-sama, Shikaku began, his voice measured and respectful. We understand the importance of the territory in question. However, Konoha cannot simply cede land without significant repercussions. We are here to seek a diplomatic resolution. Ai's eyes, hard as steel, bore into Shikaku. Diplomatic resolution? You speak of diplomacy while denying our rightful claim. That land is essential for the sustenance and growth of Kumogakure. Shikaku met his gaze without flinching. And Konoha has its own needs and obligations to its people. We propose a mutually beneficial arrangement, perhaps increased trade or shared resources, but surrendering territory is not an option. Ai's hand slammed down on the table, the sound reverberating through the room. Do you take us for fools, Nara? Your proposals are nothing but placations. We need tangible assets, not empty promises. Before Shikaku could respond, one of Ai's top generals, Darui, leaned forward. His voice was calm but carried an undercurrent of menace. We have been more than patient. Our people suffer while Konoha flourishes. It's time for action, not words. The tension in the room was palpable. Shikaku glanced at his fellow delegates, a silent exchange passing between them. He turned back to Ai, choosing his words carefully. We are prepared to increase our support and cooperation, Raikage-sama. We could offer expertise in agricultural development or share advanced medical techniques. Ai's scowl deepened. Your support will not fill the bellies of our people, Nara. Konoha's strength comes from its resources we have every right to demand. You people unlawfully occupied that land in the last war. We simply want to take back what is rightfully ours. Shikaku sighed, sensing the futility of the discussion. Raikage-sama, I urge you to reconsider. Escalating this situation will only lead to unnecessary conflict and suffering on both sides. Ai's expression darkened, a fierce determination in his eyes. You leave us no choice. If Konoha refuses to negotiate in good faith, we will take what we need by force. The declaration hung in the air, heavy and ominous. Shikaku knew the meeting had reached a critical juncture. He stood, signaling the end of the talks. Very well, Raikage-sama. We will convey your stance to the Hokage. However, I must caution you. War will bring devastation to both our nations. Ai's lips curled into a grim smile. We are prepared for that eventuality. Kumogakure has never shied away from a fight. With a final nod, Shikaku and his team left the room, their departure marked by a silence that spoke volumes. As the doors closed behind them, Ai turned to his generals, his voice a low growl. Prepare our forces. Send word to Iwa. Inform them that Konoha has refused our demands and that we must be ready for war. And let Squad 0 know that they should proceed with Plan B. Darui nodded, already moving to execute the orders. Understood, Raikage-sama. Iwa will stand with us. Ai leaned back in his chair, his mind racing with the implications of the coming conflict. We will show those bastards the strength of Kumogakure. They will regret underestimating us. As the room buzzed with activity, the Raikage's gaze shifted to the window, the mountains standing tall and unyielding. A storm was brewing, and I knew that the time for diplomacy had passed. Now, only the strength of their resolve and the might of their forces would determine the future. In the shadows of the room, unseen by the bustling figures, a lone figure slipped out, his mission clear. He would relay the Raikage's decisions to their allies, setting in motion a chain of events that would shape the destiny of the shinobi world. The hospital corridors were a maze of sterile white walls and bustling activity. Naruto, still in his training gear, walked through them with purpose. The events of the Chunin exams weighed heavily on his mind, but his thoughts were focused on one person, Hinata. He had observed her fight with Neji and her subsequent hospitalization. Determined to check on her, he made his way to her room, heart pounding with concern. As he turned a corner, he almost collided with two figures standing in the hallway. Sasuke Uchiha and Sakura Haruno, both looking tired and worried, were deep in conversation. Naruto stopped short, his eyes widening in recognition. Sakura looked up first, her green eyes meeting Naruto's. "Oh, you're Naruto, right? The Hokage's son?" Naruto nodded, scratching the back of his head. "Yeah, that's me. Are you Hinata's teammates?" Sasuke's gaze was cool and assessing. "We are. I'm Sasuke, and this is Sakura. We were just visiting her. How is she?" Naruto asked, his voice filled with genuine concern. Sakura sighed, brushing a strand of pink hair behind her ear. "She's stable, but the fight took a lot out of her. She's resting now." Naruto rubbed the back of his neck with a hand. "I saw she fought really hard. Neji's no joke." Sasuke crossed his arms, his expression unreadable. "Hinata gave it her all. She showed a lot of courage." Naruto nodded, feeling a mix of admiration and sorrow. "Can I see her?" Sakura smiled softly. "Of course. We were just about to leave anyway. She's in room 204. "Thanks," Naruto said, giving them a small, grateful smile. As Sasuke and Sakura walked away, Naruto couldn't help but feel a connection to them, despite their brief encounter. They were Hinata's friends, and by extension, they shared a common bond. He took a deep breath and pushed open the door to room 204. The room was well lit, with the soft hum of medical equipment filling the silence. Hinata lay on the bed, her face pale but peaceful. Her chest rose and fell with steady breaths, and her hands were bandaged from the intense fight. Naruto approached quietly, pulling a chair to her bedside. He sat down, his blue eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and determination. "Hey, Hinata," he whispered, not wanting to disturb her rest but feeling the need to speak. "It's me, Naruto." Hinata's eyelids fluttered, and she slowly opened her eyes. Seeing Naruto, a faint smile graced her lips. "Naruto, you came." "Of course, I did," Naruto said, his voice gentle. "I saw what happened out there. I wanted to make sure you were okay." Hinata's smile grew a bit stronger. "Thank you. I'm okay, just a little tired." Naruto looked down, feeling a knot of frustration in his chest. "I almost wish I could have been out in the arena there to support you. You fought really hard." Hinata nodded slowly. "I tried my best. But Neji, he's so strong." "Yeah," Naruto agreed, his tone soft. "But you were amazing, Hinata. You stood up to him, and that's what counts. You're stronger than you think." Hinata blushed, her eyes shining with gratitude. "Your words, they mean a lot to me, Naruto." Naruto reached out, gently taking her hand in his. "You inspire me too, Hinata. We're both fighting our own battles, but we're not alone. You've got your teammates, and I've got my training. We just have to keep pushing forward." Hinata squeezed his hand weakly but firmly. "You're right. We'll both keep getting stronger." As they sat in companionable silence for a moment, Naruto felt a sense of peace, knowing that despite the hardships, they had each other for support. Rest up, Hinata, Naruto said finally, standing up but still holding her hand. I'll visit you again soon. And don't worry about anything. Just focus on getting better. Hinata nodded, her eyes closing once more. Thank you, Naruto. I'll be waiting. As Naruto left the room, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. Hinata's resilience had reminded him of the importance of his own journey. They were both destined for greatness, and together, they would face whatever challenges came their way. Minato Namikaze, the fourth Hokage, stood by the window of his office, looking out over Konoha. The village was bathed in the golden light of the setting sun, but the beauty of the scene did little to soothe his troubled mind. Behind him, Shikaku Nara and other high-ranking officials gathered around a large table, their expressions grim. Shikaku cleared his throat, drawing everyone's attention. Hokage-sama, I've returned from my negotiation with the Raikage. I'm afraid the news isn't good. Kumo has rejected our terms outright and is making preparations for war. Minato turned to face them, his face set in a determined expression. About time. Did they give any indication of what they wanted in return for peace? Shikaku nodded. They demanded a significant portion of our arable land, which we cannot afford to give. It would cripple our food supply and leave us vulnerable. Hyuga, standing with his arms crossed, spoke up. This was to be expected. Kumo has always been aggressive. We need to prepare our defenses and secure our borders immediately. Minato nodded in agreement. We have no choice but to prepare for war. I will cancel the Chunin exams and send a message to the Raikage, asking him to return to Suna and honor our alliance. He turned to one of his aides. Send word to the messengers. They must deliver this message to the Raikage immediately. The aide bowed and hurried out of the room. Minato looked back at his council. We need to mobilize our forces and ensure the safety of our civilians. This is not going to be easy, but we must remain strong and united. The room buzzed with activity as plans were made and orders were given. The gravity of the situation hung heavy in the air, but there was a sense of resolve among the leaders. They had faced many challenges before, and they would face this one with the same determination. The two messengers, dressed in the standard attire of Konoha shinobi, made their way through the darkening streets of Konoha towards the hotel where the Raikage was staying. They moved swiftly, aware of the urgency of their mission. As they approached a secluded alley, they were suddenly ambushed. Shadows moved with lightning speed, and before the messengers could react, they were surrounded by masked figures, Anbu from Kumo. One of the Konoha messengers tried to draw his kunai, but a swift strike from one of the Kumo Anbu sent him crashing to the ground. The other messenger attempted to flee, but he was quickly subdued. The leader of the Kumo Anbu stepped forward, removing the scroll from the fallen messenger's hand. He opened it and read the contents, a cold smile forming behind his mask. They are preparing for war, he said to his subordinates. The Raikage is returning to Suna. One of the Anbu spoke up. What about our target? The leader nodded. We proceed with the search. The Jinchuriki must be found. Whether it is the one from Konoha or Suna, we need to bring them in. The leader turned towards three of his men. You three are now in Squad A. Your mission is to find the Nine Tails. With your capabilities with the Blue Fang in your ranks, consider yourself a special unit. He directed his attention to one of his operatives, a woman with sharp eyes. You will report to her until further notice. The rest of us in Squad B will search for the One Tail. Yes sir, they replied, flickering off. The remaining Anbus swiftly disposed of the bodies, ensuring no trace of their presence remained. They moved with practiced efficiency, disappearing into the night like ghosts. Back in his office, Minato paced restlessly. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The messengers should have reported back by now. He turned to Shikaku, who was deep in thought. Shikaku, something feels off. We should have heard from the messengers by now. Shikaku nodded, his brow furrowed. I agree, Hokage-sama. It's unlike them to be delayed. Just then, a young shinobi burst into the room, panting from exertion. Hokage-sama, we've found the bodies of the messengers in an alley. They were ambushed and killed. Minato's eyes widened in shock and anger. By whom? We believe it was shinobi, sir. This looks like it was a planned attack. Minato clenched his fists, his mind racing. This confirms our worst fears. Kumo is moving against us already. Hiashi stepped forward. We need to tighten security and ensure that our Jinchuriki are protected. This could be a prelude to an attack on Naruto or Gaara. Minato nodded, his resolve hardening. We will increase security around Naruto and send immediate protection to the Cage and his entourage. Prepare our forces, and ensure that everyone is ready for the coming conflict. Turning to a pair of guards next to him, he ordered. Find my son and bring him to safety. The pair nodded in understanding and flickered away. As the leaders of Konoha moved to enact their plans, the reality of war loomed ever closer. The village was now on high alert, with every shinobi ready to defend their home. Minato's heart was heavy with the burden of leadership, but he knew that he had to remain strong for the sake of his village and his loved ones. Meanwhile, Squad A and the Kumo Anbu regrouped in a hidden location outside Konoha. The leader, holding a scroll, turned to her team. Our mission is clear. We need to locate the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails, Uzumaki Naruto. We will bring him back to Kumo. Begin our search immediately. As they moved out, the tension in the air was palpable. The hunt for the Jinchuriki had begun, and the shadows of war were creeping ever closer. Naruto stood alone in the expansive training field, the sun high in the sky casting long shadows. The grass swayed gently in the breeze, but Naruto paid it no mind. His focus was razor sharp, memories of Hinata's fight against Neji replaying in his mind. He remembered the determination in Hinata's eyes, the pain she endured, and the unwavering resolve she showed despite her defeat. It fueled his own desire to become stronger. Neji, there are kids like him out there, Naruto muttered to himself, tightening his fists. If I want to protect my people, I need to be stronger. Not for my father, but for me. He launched into his training with renewed vigor, pushing his body to its limits. Sweat poured down his face as he executed a series of rapid punches and kicks, followed by chakra-infused jumps and spins. Each movement was precise, controlled, and filled with an intensity that mirrored his inner resolve. I won't let anyone hurt my friends, he declared, practicing his Rasengan. I'll get stronger, no matter what. The field echoed with the sound of his training, but Naruto was too absorbed in his efforts to notice a new presence approaching. It wasn't until he felt a subtle shift in the air that he paused, instinctively reaching for a kunai. From the edge of the field, a figure emerged. Dressed in the distinctive attire of an Anbu, the woman with sharp eyes observed him silently. Naruto tensed, ready for any sudden movement. The mask she wore was unsettling, its emotionless facade hiding her true intentions. Who are you? Naruto demanded, holding his kunai defensively. He looked around for any friendly faces. His father would always assign shinobi to watch over him. To his surprise, there was no one stepping out to back him up. The woman tilted her head slightly, studying him with an intensity that made Naruto uneasy. Slowly, she raised her hands and removed her mask. Naruto's eyes widened in surprise as the woman's mask fell, revealing her face and long, blonde hair tied in a ponytail. Yugito-sensei? Naruto gasped in surprise. I thought you'd left? Yugito continued to watch Naruto, her gaze steady. No, not yet. Naruto's grip on his kunai tightened. What do you want? Her expression remained neutral as she stepped closer, her eyes never leaving his. Naruto's gaze narrowed. Why? Why are you here? I didn't know we were meant to train. Yugito sighed, her shoulders relaxing slightly. I'm not here to train you, brat. She paused, gauging Naruto's reaction before continuing. Consider this more of a test, to see just how much you've learned. Naruto's stance remained guarded, but curiosity flickered in his eyes. Yugito, what do you mean? Yugito shrugged, a small smile playing on her lips. You know Naruto, you're a lot like me when I was your age, full of determination, wanting to prove yourself. Naruto watched her carefully, his heart pounding in his chest. This woman was from a foreign village at the end of the day. He wasn't sure he could trust her. Why are you here? He asked her, now beginning to fear for his life. Yugito steadied herself, keeping a safe distance from him. I have a mission, Jinchuriki. To capture you. Naruto Uzumaki stood alone in his training field, his heart pounding as he faced Yugito Ni, a seasoned Kumo Jonin and the Jinchuriki of the Two Tails. She had cornered him here, far from the ongoing chaos outside, her mission clear. Capture Naruto for Kumogakure. Looking around for any signs of help, Naruto regretted coming to the field alone. Yugito had clearly taken out the Anbu guards his father always had on him, and a part of Naruto suspected she had backup hidden somewhere, watching. There was no other option for him but to get out of his predicament himself. Uzumaki Naruto, Yugito said, her eyes narrowing as she assessed the young Jinchuriki. It seems I'm lucky today. You're all alone. Your loving father is unaware you're here, no? Naruto clenched his fists, his heart pounding in his chest. I won't let you take me without a fight. Before him, Yugito grinned, producing 2 kunai. I expected such from you, brat. Let's see how much you've learned. He focused, drawing on the natural energy around him, entering sage mode. His eyes turned toad-like, and he felt a surge of power. I have to protect the village, he thought. I can't let her win. Naruto dashed forward, his speed enhanced by sage mode. Evading her thrown kunai, he launched a series of punches and kicks, each one faster and stronger than before. Yugito, however, moved with fluid grace, evading his attacks with ease. Too predictable, she murmured, ducking under a high kick and countering with a swift palm strike to his chest. Naruto staggered back, the impact forcing the air from his lungs. Come on, Naruto, he thought, pushing through the pain. You can do this. He summoned shadow clones, sending them to surround Yugito. They attacked in unison, a whirlwind of strikes aiming to overwhelm her. Yugito smirked, her movements a blur as she dismantled the clones with precise, effortless strikes, flashes of a kunai landing critical hits on each target. Is this all the Nine Tails host can do? She taunted, her voice laced with a hint of disappointment. I expected more, but to be fair, all you leaf scum tend to be underwhelming. Naruto growled, forming a swirling ball of chakra in his hand. Rasengan. He created the powerful jutsu and charged at her. Take this. Yugito met his attack head-on, her hands glowing with blue chakra. She deflected Naruto's hand, wielding the Rasengan with a well-timed parry, sending Naruto crashing into the ground. The Rasengan fizzled out, leaving a deep crater where it had impacted. You missed, she said, walking towards him. You shouldn't just mindlessly rush into engagements like an idiot. Naruto struggled to his feet, his sage mode beginning to fade. No, 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 not now, not now. He panted heavily, feeling the weight of exhaustion settling in. I have to keep going, he thought desperately. I can't lose here. As his sage mode expired, Naruto felt a surge of desperation. Damn it, he cursed, breathing heavily. Gotta think of something fast. Naruto. The Uzumaki was startled by Kurama's voice calling him from within. The Nine Tails hardly spoke to him. Finding himself in their shared mind plane, Naruto carefully approached the cage barring the giant beast. I'm kind of busy, you know. What do you want, furball? Naruto demanded impatiently. Kurama grabbed the bars of the cage with a clawed hand. Maatatabi and her Jinchuriki are bent on capturing us for their village. Surely even someone as stupid as you can see that you absolutely can't lose this fight. Oh gee, thanks for the heads up, Kyuubi. Naruto smiled, his tone heavy with sarcasm. I'll just simply not lose, why didn't I think of that? The Nine Tails stirred within him, baring its teeth. Let me take over, brat. Your capture will also put my life in danger, I can't let that happen. Naruto hesitated for a moment. He had trained all his life to prevent Kurama from taking over and potentially harming people, but faced with another Jinchuriki, it was looking like a fair gamble. With no other choice, he nodded, allowing the Nine Tails chakra to envelop him. His eyes turned crimson, and a red chakra cloak formed around him, taking the shape of the Nine Tails. He roared, his power surging as his skin peeled away under the red cloak of chakra that engulfed him. With a beastly, inhuman roar, 4 chakra tails sprouted from his rear. Yugito's eyes widened slightly at the sight, but she quickly regained her composure. So, you've tapped into that power. Let's see how well you handle it. Naruto, now in his 4-tail form, lunged at her with blinding speed. His attacks were wild and ferocious, each strike carrying destructive force. Yugito deftly avoided his swipes, countering with precise blows that failed to do much damage to him. He's powerful but uncontrolled, she thought, ducking under a massive chakra-infused swipe. A quick back handspring let her evade Naruto's punch, crashing to the ground, and Yugito regained her footing, watching Naruto charge her again. Naruto's mind was a whirlwind of rage and desperation. He launched a massive arm of red chakra at her, the energy crackling with destructive power. Mouse hairball. Yugito countered with a torrent of blue flames, the two attacks clashing in a brilliant explosion. Both were pushed back, but Yugito quickly regained her footing as she was sent tumbling into the forest. Yugito's tailed beast, Maatatabi spoke from within her. You better start taking this seriously, this kid is a formidable threat. Just trust me, Yugito replied. Crossing her forearms together, 10 lengthy razor-sharp claws extended from her fingers as she smiled to herself. I know what I'm doing. I trained this brat myself. She ran at Naruto before leaping away to safety from his extending chakra arms with incredible agility. Maatatabi is right. I need to end this soon, she thought, feeling a slight fatigue as she watched Naruto chase her into the forest. Smiling to herself, she crouched low to the ground, preparing to react to Naruto's impending attack. But to be fair, I haven't had this much fun in a long time. Naruto's movements became increasingly erratic, his rage consuming him. Yugito, sensing his desperation, capitalized on his openings. She delivered a series of effective slashes, her claws glowing with flaming chakra, each strike precise and calculated and gradually chipping away at his chakra cloak. You're strong, but pretty stupid, she said, evading another of his wild attacks and leaping behind him onto a tree. Before Naruto could react, she appeared back in front of him in a blur, slashing his midsection in the process. Yugito completed the action several times, leaping from different parts of the forest and attacking Naruto before she finally landed on an opposing tree. You need to exercise control over your power. Naruto roared, launching himself at her with renewed fury. He swiped at her with his chakra tails, each one leaving deep gouges in the forest and vegetation. Yugito dodged and weaved through his attacks, her movements a blur. He's getting more reckless, she thought, preparing herself. Time to end this. Finally, Yugito decided to tap into some of Maatatabi's chakra. Blue flames flickered around her form, enhancing her speed and strength. She moved like a shadow, her attacks now carrying even greater force. Despite his newfound power, Naruto's attacks were still driven by rage and desperation, lacking the finesse and control of a seasoned fighter. Yugito, more serious now, still held the upper hand. She deftly avoided Naruto's strikes, landing precise counterattacks that wore him down. With a powerful kick, she sent Naruto crashing into the ground, his four-tail form flickering. He lay there, panting and beaten, his chakra cloak dissipating and exposing injured flesh. Yugito stood over him, her expression a mix of respect and pity. You fought well, Naruto, she said softly, her voice carrying a hint of genuine admiration. For someone so young, you have incredible strength. But you still have a lot to learn. Naruto struggled to rise, but his body refused to obey. I can't. Yugito formed a few hand signs, placing a ceiling tag on Naruto that rendered him unconscious. She lifted his limp body over her shoulder, ready to leave the forest. Searching around for approaching enemies, the Jinchuriki flickered away from the scene of the battle, her mission completed. Minato sat at his desk in the Hokage's office, his fingers drumming impatiently on the wooden surface. Stacks of documents lay before him, but his mind was elsewhere. The looming threat of war with Kumo, the recent Chunin exams, and above all, the well-being of his son weighed heavily on him. Where is he? Minato muttered to himself, frustration seeping into his voice. Where's Naruto? Unable to contain his anxiety any longer, he called out, Koichi. Get in here. The door opened swiftly, and his aide, Koichi, stepped inside, bowing slightly. Yes, Lord Hokage? Any word on Naruto? Minato's blue eyes bore into Koichi's, his voice tense. Koichi shook his head, looking uneasy. No, sir. We've searched his usual training grounds, but there's been no sign of him. It's as if he vanished. Minato's heart pounded with a mix of fear and anger. Keep looking. He can't have gone far. Just then, the door swung open again, and two shinobi entered, their expressions grave. Minato's eyes narrowed, a sense of dread creeping over him. Lord Hokage, one of them began. We searched the training grounds Naruto frequents, but he wasn't there. All we found were signs of a tough battle. The area was heavily disturbed, trees splintered, scorch marks, and traces of blood. Minato's heart sank, a cold wave of panic washing over him. Did you find any clues? Anything that could tell us who did this? The shinobi shook their heads. No, sir. Whoever it was, they covered their tracks well. All we could find were two of our men. They were killed. Minato stood abruptly, his mind racing. This can't be a coincidence. The dead messengers, and now this. Kumo is behind this. I know it. He turned to Koichi, his expression hardening. Double the security around Gaara. If they're after Naruto, Gaara could be next. I won't take any chances. Koichi nodded quickly. Yes, Lord Hokage. Right away. Minato took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. And summoned the elders. We need to discuss our next steps. If Kumo thinks they can take my son, they are gravely mistaken. Koichi hurried out to carry out the orders, while Minato turned back to the two shinobi. Thank you for your report. Stay vigilant. We'll find Naruto and bring him back safely. The shinobi bowed and exited, leaving Minato alone with his thoughts. The chances of war with Kumo were now substantially higher, and the weight of that reality pressed down on him. But beneath the anger and fear, there was a fierce determination. No matter what it took, he would protect his village and his son. The next day, in the quiet streets of the Uchiha district, the tension of the impending conflict weighed heavily on the air. Sasuke walked briskly, his thoughts a storm of fear and uncertainty. He finally reached Shisui's house, pausing for a moment before knocking on the door. The door opened almost immediately, and there stood Shisui, his face breaking into a warm smile at the sight of Sasuke. Hey, Sasuke, Shisui greeted, stepping aside to let him in. Come on in. Sasuke entered, his eyes scanning the familiar surroundings. He found comfort in Shisui's home, a place that had always felt like a refuge. They settled in the living room, and Sasuke's eyes were drawn to a photo of Itachi and Shisui on a nearby shelf, a stark reminder of the losses he had already endured. What's on your mind? Shisui asked, breaking the silence. He could see the worry etched on Sasuke's face. Sasuke took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. Shisui, I'm scared. The possible war with Kumo, the tension, it's all getting too real. And now you're being mobilized. Shisui leaned forward, his expression softening. I know it's scary, Sasuke. War is never something to take lightly. But we have to trust in our strength and the strength of our village. But what if? Sasuke's voice wavered, what if something happens to you? You're the closest thing I have to a brother now. I can't lose you too. Shisui reached out and placed a reassuring hand on Sasuke's shoulder. Sasuke, listen to me. I promise you, I'll do everything in my power to come back safe. Our duty is to protect the village and our loved ones, and that includes you. Sasuke's eyes met Shisui's, searching for the reassurance he desperately needed. But what if? No, what if? Shisui interrupted gently. We Uchiha are strong. We've faced countless challenges and come out stronger each time. You have to believe in that strength, in our shared will to protect what's important. Sasuke nodded slowly, absorbing Shisui's words. I want to believe that. I want to be strong like you and Itachi. Shisui smiled warmly. You already are, Sasuke. Your determination, your drive to protect, it's what makes you strong. And remember, you're not alone. You have your friends, your teammates. We're all in this together. A small smile tugged at Sasuke's lips. Thank you, Shisui. I needed to hear that. Shisui ruffled Sasuke's hair affectionately. Anytime, little brother. Now, let's focus on what we can do. Keep training, stay sharp, and trust in our village. We'll get through this. Sasuke felt a renewed sense of determination. You're right, we'll get through this together. As they sat there, the looming threat of war seemed a little less daunting. With Shisui by his side, Sasuke felt a glimmer of hope, a belief that they would indeed get through whatever came their way. 1 week later, the Raikage's office was a spacious room, filled with the weight of authority and power. The walls were adorned with maps of various territories, strategic plans, and symbols of Kumo's strength. The Raikage, stood by the window, gazing out at the village he was sworn to protect. His massive frame was tense with anticipation. A knock on the door broke the silence. Enter, I commanded, his voice deep and resonant. The door opened, and several figures clad in dark Anbu attire stepped inside. Among them was Yugito Ni, her mask tucked under her arm, her eyes sharp and unwavering. Lord Raikage, Yugito began, bowing slightly. We have just received confirmation from our informant. Konoha has acknowledged the receipt of our message. I turned, a grim smile spreading across his face. Excellent. What is their response? Yugito glanced at her comrades before replying. They appeared to be backing down, Lord Raikage. The possession of Naruto Uzumaki has forced them to reconsider their stance. They seem willing to negotiate a truce. The Raikage's smile widened, satisfaction gleaming in his eyes. As expected, they cannot risk the life of their precious Jinchuriki. This gives us the upper hand. He stepped away from the window, approaching Yugito and her team. You have done well, all of you. Capturing Naruto was no small feat. Your efficiency and precision have brought us to this pivotal moment. Yugito inclined her head, acknowledging the praise. Thank you, Lord Raikage. It was a coordinated effort, and our team performed admirably under pressure. Ai's gaze hardened with determination. With Naruto in our possession, Konoha is at our mercy. They will relinquish their claims to the disputed land, and our defiance to the great Konoha will inspire other nations to rise up to its dominance. He moved to his desk, where a detailed map of the ninja world lay spread out. Naruto Uzumaki is a powerful asset. His potential as a Jinchuriki is unmatched, and under our control, the Nine Tails can be shaped into a weapon that will secure our dominance over both Suna and Konoha. The room was silent, the weight of his words sinking in. Yugito and her team exchanged glances, understanding the gravity of the situation. I continued, his voice firm. We will use the beast to demonstrate our strength. Naruto's conditioning for the extraction of his tailed beast will begin immediately. With the Nine Tails as our weapon, no one will dare to challenge us. One of the Anbu members stepped forward, concern etched on his face. Lord Raikage, what if Konoha tries to retaliate or attempts a rescue operation? Ai's eyes blazed with confidence. They won't. The threat of losing Naruto permanently will keep them in check. We will remain vigilant, but for now, we have the upper hand. He turned back to Yugito, his expression softening slightly. Your contribution has been invaluable, Yugito. Your loyalty and skill have brought us to this turning point. I trust you will continue to serve Kumo with the same dedication. Yugito bowed deeply, her resolve unwavering. I will, Lord Raikage. We all will. I nodded, satisfied. Good. Prepare for the next phase. We will summon Naruto and begin his conditioning at once. As Yugito and the Anbu Squad Zero exited the room, the Raikage returned to his desk, his mind racing with plans and strategies. The future of Kumo was brighter than ever, and with Naruto Uzumaki under their control, their supremacy was all but assured. The balance of power in the ninja world was shifting, and I intended to ensure that Kumo would emerge victorious. The moonlight bathed the training ground in a ghostly silver light, casting long shadows that danced and swayed with the gentle breeze. The quiet of the night was punctuated by the soft thrum of bowstrings and the muted thud of arrows striking their targets. In the heart of the Anbu Black Ops training ground, Hinata Hyuga stood alone, her eyes focused, her stance steady. Hinata knocked an arrow and drew back the bowstring, her Byakugan activated, allowing her to see with unparalleled clarity. Her fingers released, and the arrow flew true, embedding itself in the center of the distant target with a satisfying thunk. She lowered her bow and took a deep breath, her thoughts swirling like leaves in a storm. The past few years had been a whirlwind. Her estrangement from her clan had grown, a wedge driven deeper since Neji was named the heir. Hinata harbored no ill will towards him. She admired his strength and determination. But the distance from her family weighed heavily on her, even as she dedicated herself to her training. Her former teammates, Sakura and Sasuke, were now full-fledged Chunin, preparing for the looming war with Kumo. The Lightning Nation had grown more confident over the years, daring to stand up to Konoha's dominance. The Raikage's actions had led Konoha to lose face in front of the other great nations, and it was looking more like another struggle to crush the leaf would arise very soon. The tension in Konoha was palpable, an ever-present reminder of the fragile peace that could shatter at any moment. Hinata drew another arrow, her mind drifting to Naruto. His sudden abduction 4 years ago had been a turning point in her life. The boy who had given her the courage to believe in herself was gone, taken by the enemy. The memory of his bright blue eyes and infectious smile was a constant companion, driving her to push beyond her limits. It was this determination that had caught the attention of Danzo, leading to her induction into the Anbu. The path to becoming an Anbu operative had been grueling, but Hinata's resolve never wavered. She trained relentlessly, honing her skills as a tracker and an archer. Each arrow she loosed was a step closer to bringing Naruto back, each target she hit a testament to her unwavering focus. She released another arrow, watching it fly straight and true. As it struck the target, a voice broke the silence. Impressive as always, Hinata. Hinata turned to see Kakashi Hitaki emerging from the shadows, his presence a familiar comfort. He had been her sensei in Team 7 and now found himself called back into the Anbu to train new recruits, including Hinata. Kakashi-sensei, Hinata greeted, bowing slightly. I didn't hear you approach. Kakashi's visible eye crinkled in a smile. That's the point, isn't it? You've come a long way, Hinata. Your skills as a tracker and an archer are exceptional. Hinata felt a flush of pride at his words but remained focused. Thank you, Kakashi-sensei. But I clearly still have much to learn. Kakashi nodded, his expression turning serious. I have a message for you. We're needed in the Hokage's office. Hinata's heart skipped a beat. The Hokage? Now? Yes, Kakashi confirmed. Minato-sama has called for a meeting. It's urgent. Hinata set down her bow and quiver, her mind racing. The prospect of an imminent mission sent a thrill of anticipation through her. She followed Kakashi as they made their way through the dimly lit training ground, her thoughts returning to Naruto. Every step she took, every arrow she shot, was for him. She had to believe that he was still out there, waiting to be brought home. As they approached the Hokage's office, the weight of her responsibilities settled on her shoulders. The village was on the brink of war, and the tension was a constant undercurrent. She could feel it in the streets, see it in the eyes of her fellow shinobi. But amidst the uncertainty, there was a sense of purpose. They were preparing for something monumental, and she was ready to face it head-on. In the Hokage's office, Minato Namikaze stood by the window, his gaze fixed on the village below. The years had not been kind to him, and the weight of his son's disappearance had etched lines of worry into his face. His golden hair, once vibrant, now carried streaks of gray, and his blue eyes, though still sharp, bore the signs of stress that no amount of time could erase. Minato turned away from the window and faced the room, where his most trusted advisors and shinobi had gathered. Tsunade Senju stood by his side, her arms crossed and her expression stern. Shikaku Nara, the head of the Nara clan and Konoha's strategic genius, was there as well, deep in thought. We've tried diplomacy, covert operations, and negotiations, Minato began, his voice steady but laced with frustration. But Kumo refuses to return Naruto. They see him as a valuable weapon, just as they see their own Jinchuriki. We can't wait any longer. We need to bring him back. Tsunade nodded. Agreed. The situation is getting worse. Kumo's refusal has only heightened tensions, and with Iwa backing them, we're facing a potential all-out war. We need to act now. Shikaku looked up, his eyes narrowing in thought. A direct assault on Kumo would be suicide. Their defenses are too strong, especially with the Raikage and their Jinchuriki. We need a different approach. Minato's eyes shifted to Shikaku. What do you suggest? Shikaku's fingers traced an invisible map on the table. Anbu Black Ops. A small, elite team with the skills to infiltrate Kumo undetected, locate Naruto, and extract him. Speed and stealth are our best options. We can't afford to alert the Raikage until it's too late. Tsunade uncrossed her arms, leaning forward. Do we have such a team ready? Minato nodded. We do. I've been assembling them for this very purpose. They've been training for months, honing their skills for a mission like this. We just need to give the order. A soft knock on the door interrupted the meeting. It opened to reveal Kakashi Hitaki, his masked face revealing little of his thoughts. Behind him stood Hinata Hyuga, her Anbu mask tucked under her arm, her lavender eyes filled with determination. You called for us, Hokage-sama? Kakashi's voice was calm, but there was an undercurrent of urgency. Minato stepped forward. Yes, Kakashi. It's time. We're sending in the Anbu to retrieve Naruto. You'll lead the team. Kakashi glanced at Hinata, then back to Minato. Understood. Who will be accompanying me? Minato's gaze softened as it rested on Hinata. Hinata Hyuga will be your second in command. Her tracking skills and Byakugan are crucial for this mission. The rest of the team will be selected from our best operatives. Hinata stepped forward, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions she felt. I'm ready, Hokage-sama. I won't fail you or Naruto. Tsunade's eyes softened briefly as she looked at Hinata. We know you won't, Hinata. This mission is of utmost importance. Bring your target back, no matter what. Kakashi nodded. We'll do everything we can. Minato turned to the rest of the room. Shikaku, I need you to coordinate with Suna and keep them informed. We can't afford any misunderstandings during this operation. Tsunade, you'll oversee the village's defenses while the Anbu are away. We can't leave ourselves vulnerable. Shikaku gave a short nod. Understood. I'll handle the logistics and make sure Suna is ready to support us if needed. Tsunade placed a reassuring hand on Minato's shoulder. They will bring him back, Minato. Minato took a deep breath, steeling himself. Kakashi, Hinata, prepare your team. You leave at dawn. As Kakashi and Hinata exited the room, Minato felt a renewed sense of hope. They had a plan, and the best shinobi Konoha had to offer. They would bring his son back, no matter the cost. In the Anbu headquarters, Kakashi and Hinata moved swiftly through the corridors, gathering their team. The air was thick with anticipation, each member aware of the gravity of the mission. Kakashi-sensei, Hinata began, her voice a mixture of resolve and worry. Do you think Naruto will be alright? It's been so long. Kakashi paused, looking at her with his lone, visible eye. Naruto is strong. He's survived this long, and he'll continue to fight. We just need to give him the chance to come home. Hinata nodded, determination filling her heart. I won't let him down. Not again. Kakashi's hand rested briefly on her shoulder, a gesture of reassurance. None of us will, Hinata. We're all in this together. The team was assembled in the training room, a group of elite shinobi who had trained relentlessly for this mission. Each one was hand-picked for their skills and loyalty. Kakashi addressed them, his voice carrying the weight of their task. This mission is classified as S rank. Our objective is to infiltrate Kumo, locate Naruto, and extract him without alerting the entire village. Stealth and precision are our priorities. We move at dawn. One of the Anbu members, a tall, masked figure, stepped forward. What about the Raikage and their security forces? They won't let Naruto go easily. Hinata's voice was firm as she spoke. We'll deal with them if we have to. Our primary goal is Naruto. Everything else is secondary. Kakashi nodded in agreement. Hinata is right. We have to be prepared for anything. But remember, this mission's success depends on our ability to remain undetected. We strike fast and we strike hard. Any questions? The room was silent, the gravity of the mission sinking in. Each member knew the risks, but their loyalty to Konoha and their determination to bring Naruto back drove them forward. Good, Kakashi said, his voice carrying a note of finality. Get some rest. We leave at first light. As the team dispersed, Hinata found herself alone for a moment, her thoughts drifting to Naruto. The boy who had once encouraged her to believe in herself, who had been her inspiration, was now a captive in enemy hands. But she would bring him back. She had to. The dawn broke over Konoha, casting a golden light on the village. In the Anbu headquarters, the team gathered, ready to embark on their perilous mission. Minato and Tsunade were there to see them off, their faces a mixture of hope and worry. Good luck, Minato said, his voice filled with resolve. You may proceed with your mission. Tsunade's eyes met Hinata's, a silent message of trust and encouragement passing between them. Come back safe, all of you. Kakashi gave a final nod. We will. With that, the Anbu team set out, their figures disappearing into the dawn, each step bringing them closer to Kumo and the rescue of Naruto. The mission had begun, and there was no turning back. The sea was restless as the flotilla of merchant ships sailed out of Fuka's harbor, the large port town in the Land of Wind. The vessels, 6 in total, rode the choppy waters, laden with shipments of gold freshly mined from the arid deserts of Wind Country. Their destination was foreign ports across the ocean, where the wealth of Suna would be traded for much-needed supplies and goods. The wind howled across the deck, rattling the masts and whipping at the sails. It was going to be a long journey. Captain Daigo stood at the bow of the lead merchant vessel, his eyes narrowed against the choppy waves that tossed the flotilla. The sky to the west was a bruise of dark clouds, a storm roiling in the distance. His jaw tightened as he judged the storm's path, the growing dread in his gut telling him it was no ordinary squall. Sir, his first mate, a wiry man named Renji, called out as he approached, his voice strained over the gusting wind. We should turn the fleet around the storm, head east. We can avoid it if we sail a bit into Water Country's waters. Daigo frowned, his gaze flicking from the storm to the horizon. That'll take us close to Kiri's territory. We don't want to provoke them. Renji shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the dark clouds. But if we don't, we'll sail straight into it. I'd rather face a Kiri patrol than that monster. The captain hesitated. He knew Renji was right. The storm looked vicious, a swirling mass of fury that could easily tear their fleet apart. But he also knew the tension simmering between Suna and the nations of the East. With Konoha and Suna preparing for a potential confrontation against Kumo and Iwa, every move was being watched. Kiri, under its new Mizukage, Maid Terumi, had so far stayed out of the conflict, focused instead on strengthening its naval presence. No one was sure if Kiri's unusual military buildup was a defensive measure or a prelude to picking sides in the impending war. A seagoing nation reliant on exports and trade, the water country was an economic rival of the Suna, but they had always been neutral at worst diplomatically. The last thing Daigo wanted was to give Mei an excuse to take action. Even so, the thought of braving the storm made his mouth dry with fear. "We'll skirt it," he decided finally, clapping Renji on the shoulder. "We'll sail near Kiri's waters but stay outside their line. It's a risk, but we have no choice." Renji nodded, relief and apprehension warring on his face. "Aye, Captain. I'll relay the orders." The ships veered eastward, the flotilla altering its course to avoid the dark maw of the storm. The sails billowed with the shifting wind, and the fleet moved in a more orderly fashion. Hours passed as they sailed, the vessels cutting through the restless waves, their wooden hulls groaning under the strain. The storm loomed ominously to their right, lightning flickering in its depths like the eyes of a hidden beast. "Captain!" The lookout's voice rang out from above. "Vessel on the horizon." Daigo raised his binoculars and peered through them, his breath fogging the glass. He spotted it immediately. A sleek, metallic silhouette against the gray backdrop of the sea, several flags fluttering from its mast. His heart sank as he recognized the colors of Kirigakure. "Damn," he muttered under his breath. "Kiri's navy." Renji joined him, squinting at the distant ship. "Do you think they're shadowing us?" "Could be," Daigo replied, his voice tight. "Or just a routine patrol. Either way, we keep our course. We're not trespassing." The fleet continued its journey, the merchant vessels swaying in the rough sea. But the presence of the Kiri warship weighed heavily on everyone's minds. The crew watched it warily, the tension palpable. The warship didn't alter its course, simply sailing parallel to them, keeping its distance. For now, the wind howled louder and the waves grew choppier, slapping against the hulls. Daigo's hands gripped the railing, his knuckles white. His eyes kept drifting back to the warship, a bad feeling gnawing at his gut. Then, suddenly, a strange sound filled the air, a high-pitched whistling that grew louder and louder. "What the?" Daigo started, but his words were cut off as the water around the lead vessel erupted in 6 enormous plumes, sending a cascade of seawater raining down on the deck. Men shouted in alarm, scrambling as the ship rocked violently. "What in the hell is going on?" Renji yelled, his face pale with shock. Daigo's heart pounded. "Incoming fire," he shouted, the realization hitting him like a punch. "They're firing at us." "From where?" Renji demanded, eyes wide with fear. "We're not even in their waters." Daigo grabbed his binoculars again and scanned the horizon. There it was, the Kiri warship, its deck suddenly lit up with bright flashes. The whistling noise came again, followed by a series of booming impacts as more shells hit the water around them, each explosion sending massive geysers skyward. "They're attacking us," Daigo whispered, his voice hoarse. "They're actually attacking us." Renji's face went slack with disbelief. "But why? We're just a merchant fleet." Daigo didn't have time to answer. The ship lurched as another volley landed dangerously close, the concussive force of the blasts making his ears ring. His heart was pounding so hard it hurt. "We need to get out of here," he roared, turning and sprinting into the ship's quarters. He reached for the radio, frantically tuning it to the standard frequency. "This is Captain Daigo of the Suna Merchant Fleet," he shouted into the receiver, his voice trembling. "We are a civilian convoy carrying goods. Cease fire. I repeat, cease fire." Silence. The only response was the crackle of static. A cold sweat broke out on his forehead. "Damn it," he cursed, slamming the radio down. He ran back to the deck just in time to see another salvo rain down, straddling the flotilla. The lead vessel was hit again, the impact sending a shudder through the entire ship. An explosion rocked the deck as the fuel tanks ignited, a fireball blooming from the ship's midsection. The crew screamed in panic as flames licked the rigging, the smell of burning oil filling the air. "Orders, Captain?" Renji shouted over the chaos, his face pale with terror. "Scatter," Daigo yelled, his voice raw. "Break formation and head back to Fuka. Full speed." The fleet moved chaotically as the merchant ships veered off, engines straining as they turned back toward the relative safety of the Land of Wind's waters. Daigo's heart pounded as he glanced through his binoculars again. The Kiri warship was turning, its massive silhouette moving to pursue them. The deck was lit up with more flashes as another barrage of shells flew toward the fleeing vessels. Daigo's breath caught in his throat as he watched the projectiles arc through the sky, each one whistling ominously before slamming into the water around them. More plumes erupted, and one of the trailing vessels was struck, a fiery explosion tearing it apart. "They're chasing us," Renji shouted, his voice breaking with fear. "What do we do?" Daigo's mind raced as he watched the warship close the distance, its engines clearly more powerful than those of their merchant vessels. He felt a wave of helplessness wash over him. There was no outrunning them, no outmaneuvering a ship like that. "Keep going," he shouted, desperation clawing at his voice. "We have to get back to Fuka." The flotilla fled, the sea around them exploding with each volley. Daigo's knuckles were white as he gripped the railing, his eyes fixed on the horizon. He could see the coastline of the Land of Wind in the distance, but it felt impossibly far away. As they fled under fire, Daigo couldn't shake the question that gnawed at him. Why was Kiri attacking them? Was this an act of war, or something else? The implications were terrifying, and he could only pray that they would survive long enough to find out. Another explosion rocked the ship as a shell landed dangerously close, the deck buckling under the force. Daigo stumbled, catching himself on the rail. He glanced back at the warship, now closer than ever, its guns trained on them. "Please," he whispered, his heart hammering in his chest. "Just let us make it back." But as the sky above darkened with the approaching storm and the Kiri warship loomed ever closer, he couldn't shake the feeling that they wouldn't be making it home. Naruto sat cross-legged on the cold, hard floor of his dimly lit cell, wrists bound in chakra-suppressing restraints and staring blankly at the damp stone walls. He had long since lost count of the days he'd been imprisoned in Kumo. His once vibrant blue eyes were now dulled by the weight of despair and loneliness. The only sounds that broke the monotonous silence were the occasional distant clinks of chains and the steady drip of water somewhere in the bowels of the prison. The echoing footsteps that approached his cell door were a familiar rhythm. He didn't bother looking up, already knowing who it was. The heavy door creaked open, and Killer B, the Eight-Tails Jinchuriki, stepped inside. Despite his usually upbeat demeanor, there was a seriousness in B's eyes that Naruto had come to recognize over the years. "Yo, Naruto," B greeted, his voice tinged with a somber note. He leaned against the doorframe, crossing his arms. Naruto looked up slowly, meeting B's gaze. "B," he replied, his voice flat and lifeless. "What brings you here this time?" B sighed, pushing off the doorframe and taking a few steps closer. "I got some news, and it ain't good, man. The Raikages made his decision. They're gonna keep trying to extract the 9 tails from you." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Naruto felt his heart sink, the faint flicker of hope he'd clung to snuffed out in an instant. "So, that's it then? I'm just a weapon to be used and discarded?" B's face softened, and he shook his head slowly. "I tried to talk him out of it, but the Raikage's mind is set. He ain't trustin' you to defect anymore. I'm sorry, Naruto." Naruto's shoulders slumped as he leaned back against the wall, the weight of his situation pressing down on him like a physical force. "Well, maybe this time they'll get past the seal and put me out of my misery," he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. Within him, Kurama stirred, his deep voice rumbling through Naruto's mind. "TCH, these humans. They treat us like tools, passing us around as they please." Naruto closed his eyes, trying to block out the overwhelming sense of hopelessness. "What am I supposed to do now, B? Just wait for them to kill me?" B knelt down, bringing himself to Naruto's level. "I know it ain't fair, but you gotta stay strong, ya feel me? Maybe there's a way out, even if it ain't clear right now." Naruto opened his eyes, looking into B's. "How am I supposed to stay strong when every day just brings me closer to being a sacrificial lamb? I've tried everything to show them I'm not a threat, that I could be loyal to Kumo, but none of it mattered." B's eyes reflected a deep empathy. I get it, man. More than you know. Being a Jinchuriki ain't easy, and it ain't fair. But we gotta find our own strength, even when it seems impossible. Naruto's gaze drifted to the small, barred window high on the wall, where a sliver of moonlight filtered through. This is really it. This is how everything ends for me. Dragging me out of here every week to get to the beast sealed inside me. B followed his gaze, the moonlight casting a faint glow on his face. I wish I could do something about it, but it's out of my grasp, kid. I'm sorry. A silence settled between them, heavy with unspoken thoughts and shared burdens. B stood up, his expression resolute. I'll come back when I can. Just hang in there, alright? Naruto nodded slowly, watching as B turned and walked towards the door. As B's footsteps faded away, the oppressive silence of the cell closed in once more, wrapping around Naruto like a shroud. Kurama's voice broke the silence, filled with a rare note of sympathy. Don't even think of giving up yet, brat. There's still a chance, even if it's small. Naruto let out a shaky breath, feeling the weight of his situation press down on him even harder. I don't want to give up, but it's getting harder every day. Alone in the cell, the fox's presence within him felt like a steady, if distant, source of warmth for Naruto. I don't trust these people enough to allow myself be handed over to them and made another tool for that Raikage. Naruto nodded, closing his eyes and trying to find some small measure of peace in the darkness. Despite the bleakness of his situation, he clung to that fragile thread of hope, determined not to let it slip away entirely. The moon hung low in the night sky, casting a silvery glow over the hidden village of Kumo. High above the village, nestled among the mountains, the Raikage's compound stood as an imposing fortress, its walls bristling with defenses. Few dared to challenge its might, but tonight, a team of elite Konoha Anbu operatives moved with deadly precision, their mission clear and perilous. Infiltrate the compound and rescue Naruto Uzumaki. Hinata Hyuga led the team, her Byakugan activated, the veins around her eyes bulging slightly as she scanned the surroundings. Her heart pounded with a mix of anticipation and anxiety. The past 4 years had been a relentless drive towards this moment, fueled by the hope of bringing Naruto home. Beside her, Kakashi Hitaki moved with the same practiced stealth that had earned him his legendary reputation. Hinata, what's the situation? Kakashi's voice was barely above a whisper, a mere breath of sound carried by the wind. Hinata's gaze pierced through the walls and buildings, mapping out the positions of every guard and patrol within the compound. 3 guards at the main entrance, 2 more patrolling the perimeter. There's a heavy concentration of guards near the underground cells. Kakashi nodded, his masked face impassive. We'll take out the perimeter guards first. Silence is key. Looking around at his team, he gave the order. Scatter. The Anbu team split into pairs, moving with ghost-like silence through the shadows. Hinata moved with a fluid grace, her senses attuned to every sound and movement. She notched an arrow to her bow, drawing back the string with practiced ease. As a guard turned the corner, she released the arrow, the shaft flying true and striking the guard in the throat. He fell silently, the only sound the faint thud of his body hitting the ground. Kakashi and another Anbu operative dispatched the remaining perimeter guards with swift efficiency, their blades cutting through the night. Within minutes, they were inside the hidden village, the guards eliminated without raising an alarm. With a friendly Anbu by his side, Kakashi whispered into his radio. We're inside, Kakashi announced. Proceed to the underground cells. Roger, came the feminine voice from the radio. Signaling her squad mate behind her, Hinata slipped into the shadows, making her way towards the Raikage's compound. The 2 teams moved in sync, each stealthily moving through the shadows and avoiding the searchlights that swept across the compound. Hinata led the way, her Byakugan guiding them through the gaps in the Raikage's tight defenses. As they approached the entrance to the underground cells, the tension in the air thickened. This was where the real danger lay. Hinata raised a hand, signaling for the team to halt. Heavy guard presence ahead. We have to push through them. Kakashi nodded, pulling out a pair of binoculars. On my mark, we will move in and secure Naruto. He studied the guard patrols, waiting for an opportunity to present itself. Finally, a trio of guards made their way from the entrance inside the facility itself, leaving just 2 men on guard. Kakashi turned to Hinata. Handle the 2 guards stationed right at the entrance. We can ignore the rest stationed around. Right, Hinata whispered, steadying herself on the tree branch she was perched on. Drawing an arrow on her bow, she steadied her aim on the guard on the left, taking deep breaths to calm herself down. After a moment, she let fly, striking the first guard square in the throat. The man silently collapsed on the floor, muted screams coming from his mouth. His partner never noticed his death, however, his attention was on something in the sky. Hinata quickly punished him for this, sending her next shot into his exposed neck and watching him drop to the ground. "Beautiful," came Kakashi's voice from the radio. "Gather at the entrance and wait for my instructions." The team made their way to the secured entrance, quickly hiding the bodies of the two slain guards and giving Hinata the chance to see her victims up close. One of them, the one looking at the sky, was barely older than her, and her heart stung at the possibility she just ensured a proud mother would never see her son again. Suppressing the growing feeling of guilt she felt in her heart, she moved inside the dungeon, such was her duty. "Oi, Inumaki," a prison guard called out, making his way towards the entrance. "Time's up, we're meant to." A hand covered his mouth, pulling him into the shadows as the assailant dragged a blade across his throat before he could react to what was going on. The guard struggled to free himself, holding his bleeding throat, and found himself handed over another person. The searing feel of cold steel lodged in his chest silenced the man for good, and the last thing he saw was a face with a headband slanted over its right eye. "Move," Kakashi ordered, gently settling the dead guard to the floor and returning his dagger to its sheath. The team rallied behind Hinata for guidance through the unfamiliar location. Hinata's Byakugan locked onto a cell deep within the underground dungeon. "This way," she whispered, leading the team through the elaborate system of corridors. The team managed to make their way undetected, expertly making use of any available cover they could find. Hinata's heart raced as they navigated the narrow corridors, her Byakugan guiding them through the maze. Finally, they reached a heavy iron door, reinforced with chakra seals. "Stand back," Kakashi ordered, forming a series of hand signs. "Release." The seals shattered under Kakashi's command, the door creaking open to reveal a dimly lit cell. Inside, Naruto sat hunched against the wall, his eyes widening in disbelief as he recognized the masked figures. "Anbu?" Naruto's voice was hoarse, filled with a mixture of hope and confusion. Hinata's heart ached at the sight of him, but she maintained her composure. "Grab him," she ordered, watching as two of her squad mates made their way towards Naruto inside the cell. Expertly, the pair removed the chakra restraints on his wrists, helping Naruto to his feet. Naruto stood, his movements slow and stiff from long confinement. "Hinata," he whispered in disbelief, swearing he heard her voice through the mask. Before Hinata could respond, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed down the corridor. Yugito Ni and Killer Bee appeared, their expressions a mix of surprise and determination. "Looks like we've got company," Bee said, cracking his knuckles. "You really thought you could just walk out of here?" He drew out 8 swords from their sheaths on his back and tossed them in the air, wielding them all as they settled down in a peculiar stance. Kakashi stepped forward, his Sharingan eye blazing with intensity. "We're not leaving without Naruto." Yugito's eyes narrowed, extending her claws from her fingers. "Then you'll have to go through us, intruders." The air crackled with tension as the two sides faced off. Hinata could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her, but she pushed it aside, focusing on the mission. She knocked an arrow, her gaze locked on Yugito. Kakashi and Bee clashed first, their movements a blur of speed and power. Kakashi struggled against Bee's lightning-fast strikes, the clash of metal ringing through the corridor. Wielding his kunai close, he deflected a sword from his opponent only to find himself having to deal with 5 more slashes coming in rapid succession. An Anbu rushed behind Bee to catch him off guard but found himself slammed against the wall by a massive tentacle that shot out of his leg in midair. The other Konoha shinobi rushed towards Bee, sword lowered for an attack. Evading a slash from the Jinchuriki, he aimed for Bee's side with a powerful cut, but found his blade blocked by a sword being wielded in the bend of his knee. "Shit!" Killer Bee shot out a burst of ink at the Anbu's mask, obscuring his vision, and aimed for his neck with a slash from one of his swords. But he caught movement in the corner of his eye, seeing Kakashi rushed towards him, hand crackling in electricity. "Raikage!" Kakashi lunged at the Jinchuriki, but Bee was up to it. evading his attack just in time and sending Kakashi flying into a wall with a powerful kick. 4x. Hinata loosed an arrow at Yugito, but the Kumo Jinchuriki dodged with inhuman speed, closing the distance between them in an instant. Hinata barely had time to draw her kunai before Yugito was upon her. They exchanged blows, Hinata doing her best to defend herself from Yugito's raw power. But it was clear that the Anbu team was outmatched. B and Yugito were relentless, their combined strength overwhelming. Over time Hinata found herself leaving more and more openings against Yugito, and a potentially nasty slash to her side sent her falling to the ground, wincing in pain. Luckily for the Hyuga, her jacket took most of the damage. "We can't win this," Kakashi grunted, parrying a powerful strike from B. "We need to retreat." Hinata's heart clenched at the thought of leaving Naruto behind again, but she knew Kakashi was right. "Fall back," she called, covering their retreat with a flurry of arrows. The Anbu team moved with practiced efficiency, retreating through the corridors and back towards the surface. The alarm had been raised, and the compound was swarming with guards. They fought their way out, the clash of steel and the hiss of arrows filling the air. Finally, they burst through the compound's outer gates, disappearing into the night. Hinata's heart pounded with a mix of relief and anguish. They had failed to rescue Naruto, but they had survived. For now, that was enough. As the Anbu team regrouped in a hidden clearing, Kakashi turned to Hinata, his expression grim. "We'll get another chance. We have to." Hinata nodded, her resolve hardening. She wouldn't give up, not until Naruto was safe. The prison cell reeked of sweat and despair. The walls, cold and unyielding, had witnessed Naruto's silent agony over the years. Shackled to the ground, he watched as the Konoha Anbu team sent to retrieve him engaged in a fierce battle with Killer B and Yugito. His heart pounded against his ribs as he saw them falter, forced to retreat. "No, no," Naruto muttered under his breath, a hollow ache settling in his chest. He had tasted freedom in their presence, only for it to be snatched away once more. But then, something snapped inside him, a surge of determination, raw and unyielding, swelling within him like a tidal wave. Gritting his teeth, he forced himself to his feet, muscles straining against the chains that bound him. A guttural growl echoed within his mind. "Don't waste this opportunity, brat." Kurama's voice, low and rumbling, filled the air. "You've been holding back for too long. Now's your chance." With a sudden rush of energy, his body erupted in flaming orange chakra, the vibrant glow of the Nine Tails' power enveloping him. The chains around his wrists and ankles sizzled and snapped like paper, crumbling to the ground. Killer B turned, eyes widening in shock. "Yo," his chakras flaring up. "The restraints, they've been taken off." Yugito's gaze followed B's, her mouth falling open as she saw the transformation. "Impossible. No one could have removed them." Before she could finish, Naruto was already moving. In a blur of motion, he lunged at the guards who had just stormed into the room, his movements fueled by years of pent-up rage. One guard raised his weapon, only for Naruto to grab him by the throat and slam him into the wall with bone-crushing force. B rushed forward, his voice a desperate shout. "Naruto, chill. You don't want to do this." But Naruto didn't stop. His hand shot out, seizing B's arm, and with a brutal twist, he swung him into the wall, shattering the man's forearm. B cried out, pain etched across his face as he crumpled to the ground. "B!" Yugito screamed, her voice cracking with fear as she dashed to his side. Two guards ran over to help her drag B away, his arm hanging limply at his side. Yugito knelt beside him, her eyes filled with worry. "B, are you okay?" He grimaced, sweat beading on his forehead. "I'm good, just a scratch." His attempt at humor fell flat, pain distorting his voice. "Don't hurt him, Yugi. He's just a kid." Her jaw tightened, eyes flashing with anger. "He's a kid who's tearing our people apart." She glanced back at Naruto, her fingers twitching. "I swear I'm gonna make him pay for this." B's good hand caught hers, his grip firm despite his injuries. "Promise me you won't kill him, Yugi. Just promise." She hesitated, her gaze softening as she looked at him. "Fine, I won't kill him. But he's not leaving this place." Naruto, his vision tinged red with Kurama's chakra, fought with a wild ferocity, each strike a testament to his will to escape. Guards rushed at him, weapons drawn, but he was relentless, a whirlwind of fury. He moved through them like a force of nature, fists and feet connecting with bone-crunching force. Blood sprayed the walls, and the scent of iron filled the air as he tore through them, leaving a trail of broken bodies in his wake. Is that all you've got? Kurama's voice roared within him, urging him on. Show them your true power. A guard swung a sword at him, and Naruto caught the blade with his bare hand, the chakra cloak protecting him from the metal's edge. With a snarl, he yanked the weapon from the man's grip and drove it through his chest, the guard's eyes widening in shock as he crumpled to the ground. Another guard charged, only to be met with a devastating kick that sent him crashing into the wall, the impact shattering stone and bone alike. Naruto stood amidst the carnage, his chest heaving, his body bathed in the glow of his chakra. Beautiful, Kurama urged, the bloodlust in his voice palpable. You're getting the hang of it. The last guard fell, his body crumpling to the ground, and Naruto paused, his breath ragged. The rage within him still simmered, a burning need for vengeance that clawed at his insides. He turned towards the exit, his mind set on one thing: freedom. Bursting through the prison's gates, he stumbled into the courtyard, the cool night air hitting his face like a splash of water. For a moment, he stood still, his eyes wide as he gazed up at the night sky. It had been years since he had seen the stars, felt the wind on his face. A lump formed in his throat, and for the briefest of moments, he felt something akin to peace. But then, shouts echoed from the shadows, and he saw more guards pouring into the courtyard, weapons gleaming under the moonlight. Kurama's voice rumbled within him, filled with urgency. You have to fight. Don't let them take this from you. With a feral roar, Naruto charged forward, his fists blazing with fury. He tore through the guards, his movements a blur of speed and violence. Blood sprayed the ground, and the air was filled with the sound of screams and death. He was unstoppable, a force of destruction, and nothing would stand in his way. As he dispatched the last of the guards, a voice called out from behind him. Naruto. He turned, his eyes narrowing as he saw Yugito standing there, a smirk on her lips. Going somewhere? He growled, the rage boiling inside him. Get out of my way. Yugito chuckled, her hands on her hips. You've made quite the mess, haven't you? She glanced around at the bodies strewn across the ground. You know, the Raikage is not going to be happy about this. This was all technically on my watch. You're making me look bad, kid. Naruto's fists clenched, his body trembling with fury. I don't care. I'm leaving, and you're not stopping me. She sighed, shaking her head. Come on, just get back in your cell. Help me out here. The casual tone in her voice, the way she dismissed everything he'd been through, it made his blood boil. You. He took a step forward, his voice a low, dangerous growl. You took me from my home. You've kept me here, locked away like some animal. I'm not going back. Yugito's eyes widened, her smirk fading. Whoa, calm down there. She held up her hands. Look, I get it, you're pissed. But let's not do something we'll both regret, okay? I'm going to kill you. Naruto's voice was a snarl, his eyes blazing with hatred. Yugito's expression hardened, her gaze locking onto his. You can try. The courtyard seemed to shrink around them, the tension between them a palpable force. Naruto's heart pounded in his chest, his entire being screaming for revenge, for freedom. And as he stared at Yugito, he knew there was no turning back. One of them was going to die tonight. And he was determined that it wouldn't be him. Naruto's breaths came in ragged gasps, his body covered in the searing orange cloak of the Nine Tails chakra. The air around him sizzled with an almost unbearable heat as he stared across the courtyard at Yugito, who stood expressionless, her eyes cold and calculating. With a guttural roar, Naruto exploded towards her, the ground cracking beneath his feet from the force of his launch. Yugito's eyes widened, barely a flash of surprise crossing her features before he was upon her. He grabbed her by the throat with a grip like iron and slammed her into the wall of a nearby building, shattering the stone on impact. The entire structure groaned under the force, and cracks spider-webbed around them. Yugito grunted, feeling the force of the blow reverberate through her bones. She clawed at his arm, trying to pry his fingers away from her neck, but his strength was overwhelming. He squeezed harder, his eyes wild with rage and desperation, and Yugito felt her vision blurring at the edges. Yugito. Maatatabi's voice echoed in her mind, filled with concern. This boy has Kurama's chakra. Be careful. Yugito nodded inwardly, still struggling against Naruto's grip. I can see that, she replied through gritted teeth. He's stronger than I thought. She coughed as his fingers dug deeper into her throat, feeling the air leaving her lungs. We can't let him reach the village. Agreed, Maatatabi said, her voice steady. Let me lend you some of my power. Yugito felt the familiar surge of chakra welling up from within her, the blazing blue flames of Maatatabi's energy wrapping around her like a second skin. Dark markings spread across her arms and back, and her pupils narrowed into black slits, a feline predatory gleam in her gaze. With a burst of strength, she wrenched herself free from Naruto's grasp, the sudden force sending him stumbling back. Before he could react, she kicked him hard in the chest, the blow sending him skidding across the courtyard. Naruto rolled to his feet, his eyes blazing with fury. He watched as Yugito stepped out of the crater in the wall, her body wreathed in the flickering flames of Maatatabi's chakra. She seemed almost ethereal, the blue light casting eerie shadows across her face. If you're going to be stubborn, she said, her voice calm but laced with steel, then we'll do things your way. She dropped into a low, wide stance, extending her clawed hands. The air around her seemed to hum with energy, a palpable tension that made Naruto's heart pound in his chest. With a snarl, he formed a Rasengan in his free hand, the swirling orb of energy glowing brightly. He charged at her, his footsteps pounding against the ground as he closed the distance. But just as he was about to strike, Yugito vanished. His eyes widened in shock as his Rasengan slammed into the wall behind her, the stone exploding into dust and debris. He spun around, searching frantically, only to see her reappear behind him in a blur of motion. Before he could react, she drove her knee into his gut with a devastating impact, the force of the blow lifting him off his feet. Naruto crashed into the ground, gasping for air, but Yugito was relentless. She was on him in an instant, her claws flashing in the dim light as she struck him again and again. He barely managed to block her attacks, her speed overwhelming his senses. Every time he tried to retaliate, she would disappear and reappear at another angle, striking him from every direction. He swung wildly, his fist cloaked in chakra, but she ducked under his arm and drove her elbow into his side. Pain exploded through his ribs, and he stumbled back, clutching his side. Yugito didn't give him a moment to recover. She leapt into the air, spinning gracefully before driving her heel into his shoulder. The impact sent him sprawling, his shoulder dislocating with a sickening crunch. Damn it! Kurama's voice rumbled in his mind, filled with frustration. Maatatabi's Jinchuriki is a pain again. She won't stop me. Naruto roared, his voice hoarse. He struggled to his feet, his body trembling with exertion. Blood dripped from a cut above his eye, and his breath came in ragged gasps, but he pushed forward, his will unbroken. I won't go back into that cell. He charged at her again, his movements fueled by desperation and rage. But Yugito was like a phantom, her form shifting and blurring as she evaded his attacks effortlessly. She weaved around his punches and kicks, her claws raking across his skin, leaving deep gashes that sizzled with blue flames. Naruto stumbled, his vision blurring from the pain and exhaustion. He swung his fist one last time, but Yugito caught it easily, her grip like a vice. She twisted his arm behind his back and kicked his legs out from under him, slamming him face first into the ground. He groaned in pain, trying to push himself up, but Yugito's foot pressed down on his back, pinning him to the ground. Stay down, brat, she said quietly, her voice devoid of malice. This is over. Naruto's vision swam as he struggled against her hold, but his strength was failing. The fiery cloak of chakra around him began to flicker and fade, the light dimming as his energy drained away. He let out a final, pained gasp as the cloak vanished entirely, leaving him lying on the cold ground, beaten and broken. A group of Kumo shinobi, clad in the dark uniforms of the village's elite, approached cautiously. The leader, a stern-faced man with a scar running down his cheek, nodded to Yugito. We'll take it from here, Yugito-sama. She stepped back, her eyes never leaving Naruto's prone form. The shinobi surrounded him, quickly placing sealing tags on his wrists and ankles. The leader glanced at Yugito again. Thank you for your help. We'll make sure he doesn't cause any more trouble. Yugito deactivated her chakra cloak, the blue flames dissipating into the air. She nodded curtly. Keep a close eye on him, she warned. He's more dangerous than he looks. She glanced towards the distant lights of the village. I'm going to check on B at the hospital. The shinobi nodded, and they lifted Naruto's limp form onto a stretcher. He groaned softly, his body racked with pain, but the worst of it was inside. He had come so close to freedom, only to be dragged back into the darkness of his captivity. His heart ached with a deep, unyielding homesickness, a longing for the place he had been taken from so many years ago. As they carried him back towards the holding facility, he felt the last remnants of hope slipping away. He was going back to his cell, and this time, it felt like he would never leave again. The heavy iron doors of the prison loomed ahead, and Naruto closed his eyes, letting the darkness take him. THSTA all for now. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments.